Yes, we're talking about a 1952 mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny, a tiny piece of copper that changed one collector's life forever. For most people, it's just another old penny. Brown, worn, forgotten in a drawer somewhere. But for one lucky person, that little 1952 coin turned out to be a golden ticket, literally worth over $1.1 million. And here's the wild part. You might have one just like it sitting in your house right now. Back in 1952, the San Francisco Mint was winding down its production of wheat pennies. It was a different world. Gas cost 20 cents, the average house was under $10,000, and nobody gave a second thought to their change. But in those final runs at the mint, something happened. A small batch of Lincoln pennies left the presses with subtle, nearly invisible minting mistakes that went unnoticed for decades. No one could have imagined that a simple slip in the die alignment, a faint doubling on Lincoln's date, or a rare off-metal strike would someday create one of the most valuable modern-era pennies ever found. Collectors were shocked when the story broke. A man in California, going through his late father's coin collection, discovered an unassuming wheat penny with an S beneath the date. The color was a deep, rich red-brown, and under magnification, the date showed something strange, a tiny, almost ghostly doubling on the 1952. It didn't look like much, but when experts took a closer look, they were stunned. What they found was a near-perfect error coin, struck on a leftover pre-1943 bronze planchet, an accident that shouldn't have happened in 1952. Combine that with its full luster, sharp strike, and rare die markings, and this ordinary-looking penny became one of the most extraordinary coins in American history. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When the coin hit the auction block, bids exploded. Collectors, investors, and even museums were battling for it. The price climbed past $100,000 in minutes, then $500,000, then silence. The final bid dropped like a thunderclap. $1.1 million for a single penny. One man's pocket change had just become $1 million miracle. Now here's where things get really interesting. The 1952 penny isn't just valuable because it's old, it's valuable because of the details most people completely miss. The tiniest variations can make or break its value. If you've got a 1952 penny, hold it under good light and look closely at the date and mint mark. On the most valuable versions, you might notice slight doubling on the 9, or 5, or a subtle tilt to the S. These are signs of a misaligned die, a rare minting accident that collectors crave, and color matters too. If your penny still shines with that original red or red-brown tone, not dull, not corroded, you could be sitting on something truly special. Many of the 1952 wheat pennies were poorly stored and lost their luster, but the few that remain pristine are now worth thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it gets even more dramatic. A handful of these 1952 pennies were mistakenly struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, coins that should never have existed. Those off-metal strikes are virtually priceless today, with only a few known examples. Experts say that if one of those surfaces again, it could easily surpass the $1 million record. Imagine that, a single penny, worth more than a house, hidden somewhere in a coffee can or desk drawer. Collectors were floored when a nearly perfect MS-67 example surfaced a few years ago. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on it, offering 5 and 6 figures on the spot. And when the grading companies confirmed its authenticity, its value skyrocketed overnight. The combination of flawless condition, historical intrigue, and pure rarity made it one of the most sought-after coins in U.S. history. Most of these treasures are still out there. The U.S. Mint produced over 137 million wheat pennies in 1952 at the San Francisco facility, and only a fraction have been carefully examined by experts. Every week, coin shops and online marketplaces report new finds. An uncirculated 1952 penny selling for thousands, a rare die crack version going for tens of thousands. And yet, most folks never look twice at the pennies in their pocket change. They spend them, lose them, or toss them aside, completely unaware that one could be worth a life-changing fortune. That's the thrill of coin hunting. Every old penny tells a story, and some tell $1 million story. You're cleaning out an old box from your parents' attic. Inside, a small jar filled with wheat pennies, all brown and dusty. You pour them out on the table, thinking nothing of it. Then, one catches your eye. The date reads 1952, and below it, that tiny S. You flip it under the light, and your heart skips. Could this be the one? Could you be holding a coin worth more than a new car, or even a home? It's happened before. Ordinary people, just like you, finding extraordinary coins in the most unexpected places. And here's how you can make sure you don't miss your chance. First, always check the mint mark. That little S under the date means it came from San Francisco. Then, examine the color. Bright red or red-brown means high value. Next, inspect the date carefully. Look for doubling or strange marks. Even the smallest imperfection could mean a rare minting error. Finally, if it looks special, don't clean it. Cleaning can destroy thousands of dollars in value. Instead, take it to a professional coin dealer or send it for grading. Because every now and then, a coin like this resurfaces, and when it does, it changes everything. Collectors are still buzzing about the last $1 million 1952 penny. Auction houses are watching closely, waiting for another one to appear. Experts believe there could be several more still in circulation, maybe in someone's jar of change, maybe in a thrift shop, maybe in your own drawer right now. So the next time you see an old penny with an S mint mark, don't pass it over. Take a closer look. Because that tiny coin might not just be copper, it might be your ticket to $1 million discovery. The year was 1941. America was on the brink of World War II. Families were rationing supplies, and people were saving every single penny, literally. But somewhere in the chaos of that era, a single coin quietly slipped off the presses of the Philadelphia Mint. It looked ordinary. A simple copper penny. But that 1941 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny would one day become one of the most valuable coins in U.S. history, worth up to $1.2 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash. Forgotten in jars, buried in drawers, and passed over by millions of people for decades. But one day, a collector noticed something that would change everything. You see, in 1941, the U.S. Mint produced billions of Lincoln wheat pennies. Most were struck in Philadelphia and carried no mint mark. So, you might be wondering, what makes this no mint mark penny so special? Why would anyone pay over $1 million for something that looks like every other penny you've ever seen? The answer lies in one of the mint's most elusive mistakes. A small, nearly invisible error that only the sharpest eyes can spot. Collectors call it the double die mystery. When the dies used to stamp Lincoln's face were slightly misaligned, it caused a faint doubling effect, particularly visible on the date 1941 and the word Liberty. It's not obvious at first glance. In fact, most people miss it completely. But for those who know what to look for, that subtle doubling transforms an ordinary coin into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. But that's just the beginning of this coin's story. One of the first major discoveries of this rare error came decades later, long after the war had ended. A retired machinist in Pennsylvania was sorting through an old coffee can of coins his father had collected. Inside, he noticed something strange. The 1941 penny looked slightly different. The numbers seemed thicker, bolder, as if stamped twice. Curious, he brought it to a local coin dealer. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. After careful examination and magnification, experts confirmed that he was holding one of the rarest Lincoln wheat pennies ever struck. News spread fast. Within months, collectors were offering thousands, then tens of thousands of dollars. And when one of these rare 1941 no-mint mark double-die pennies finally hit the auction block, the hammer fell at an unbelievable price, over $1.2 million. Imagine that. A penny that once sat in someone's pocket for a cup of coffee, now worth more than most houses. But that's not the only twist in this incredible story. Because there's another version of the 1941 penny that's just as intriguing, and nearly impossible to spot. Some coins were struck on the wrong metal planchet. Instead of pure copper, a few rare pieces were accidentally made from experimental bronze alloys used during testing at the mint. These off-metal errors were never meant to circulate, but a handful escaped into the world. Those coins, too, have become priceless treasures, with values soaring into the hundreds of thousands. Collectors were shocked. Dealers rushed to authenticate every 1941 penny they could find. And soon, stories began emerging from across the country. People discovering old coin rolls from their grandparents. Shoeboxes filled with pennies from the 1940s. Each new find brought the same question: could this be the one? One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. The magic of the 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny is not just its error, it's the history it carries. Minted during one of the most turbulent times in American history, this coin represents endurance, mystery, and unbelievable luck. It's a tangible piece of a bygone era, when even a penny could hold the power to change a life. But here's what makes this story even more unbelievable. Some collectors claim there are still undiscovered 1941 double-die pennies out there, hidden in circulation, tucked inside forgotten collections, or resting quietly in old jars of change. The mint never officially confirmed how many were struck. Experts estimate fewer than 30 exist in pristine condition. And the last one sold for a staggering amount, with rumors suggesting it crossed the seven-figure mark. First, flip the coin under good lighting. Look closely at the date. If the 1 and 9 in 1941 appear slightly thicker or shadowed, that's your first clue. The doubling effect often looks like a faint ghost image, especially around the edges of the numbers. Next, inspect the word, Liberty, and Lincoln's eye. On genuine double-die examples, the doubling is visible even to the naked eye once you know where to look. Now, pay attention to the color and surface. Authentic high-value examples often show sharp details and rich, reddish tones, an indicator that the copper has been well preserved. If you find one in near-mint condition, you could be holding one of the most valuable pennies ever struck. But there's one more detail that separates the $1 million coin from the rest. On some of the rarest examples, the reverse side, the wheat design, shows crisp, deep lines between the stalks. It's a sign that the die used to strike it was freshly prepared, creating sharper images. Combine that with the double die obverse, and you've got a coin that collectors dream of owning. Even lightly circulated 1941 double-die pennies can fetch thousands. You don't need a perfect mint-state coin to make a small fortune. That's why coin experts across the country are constantly reminding people, check your change, your jars, your drawers, even those old boxes in the attic. Because the next great discovery might not come from a professional collector. It could come from someone just like you, someone who decides to take one last look before spending that ordinary penny. The story of the 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny is a reminder that history hides in the smallest places. That luck favors those who pay attention. And that sometimes, a tiny piece of copper can hold a secret worth over $1 million. So, before you toss that old penny into a tip jar or a Coinstar machine, take a closer look. That faint doubling, that slight shimmer on the numbers, it could be the clue to a hidden fortune. Because somewhere out there, right now, another 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny is waiting to be discovered. And it could be sitting in your pocket, your desk, or your old piggy bank, quietly holding the power to change your life forever. Just another penny, dull and ordinary, stamped with a small D under the date. But what most people didn't realize was that this 2016 D Lincoln penny carried a hidden flaw, one so rare, it turned a single cent into a staggering $1.3 million. Discovery.it happened in Denver, deep inside the U.S. Mint, where billions of pennies are born each year. Machines roared, metal clanked, and blank copper-plated zinc discs were being transformed into America's most common coin. But in the chaos of that process, something went wrong. A single die, used to strike thousands of coins, was slightly misaligned. Maybe it was a human oversight. Maybe a vibration on the production line. But that one flaw created a batch of pennies that would change the coin world forever. One of those pennies slipped quietly into circulation. It jingled in pockets, got handed over for coffee, tossed into change jars, maybe even dropped on the floor. No one noticed its secret. No one realized that it wasn't just a coin, it was a fortune hiding in plain sight. Years later, a man from Colorado stumbled upon one of these 2016 D pennies while sorting through his old change. He almost ignored it. It looked like every other penny he'd seen for decades. The familiar Lincoln profile, the memorial on the back, the copper color. But then, something caught his eye. The D mint mark looked off. Slightly doubled. The rim was thicker on one side. And when light hit the coin, the date seemed faintly doubled too. He took it to a local coin dealer, expecting maybe a few bucks of value. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Under magnification, the dealer realized this wasn't just a minor error. It was a double die obverse, a minting mistake so rare that almost none have survived without wear. The doubling on the date and mint mark was clear and strong, the kind of dramatic error that collectors dream of. Word spread fast. Experts confirmed it, grading the coin in near-perfect mint state. And when it hit the auction block, the bidding war exploded. By the time the hammer fell, that single 2016 D Lincoln penny had sold for an unbelievable $1.3 million. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were scrambling to check their stock. Suddenly, the humble penny, something most people drop in parking lots, was headline news. One man's pocket change had become $1 million miracle. But here's the twist most people miss. There could be more out there. That Denver mint die didn't strike just one coin. It could have created a handful, maybe even dozens before being retired. That means somewhere, buried in rolls of pennies or tucked inside an old coin jar, another one might be waiting. And if you find it, you might just change your life forever. The key to spotting it lies in the small details. Look closely at the date. 2016. The doubling will be most visible on the 1 and the 6. It's subtle, but unmistakable when you know what to look for. Then, focus on the D mint mark. A clear doubling or shadow-like outline around it is your biggest clue. And check the edges. One side may appear slightly raised or thicker, the result of a misaligned die strike. Collectors who've studied this coin say it has a distinct luster, almost like a halo effect around Lincoln's portrait. That's because the metal flow during minting was slightly off, creating a sheen that separates it from normal 2016 D pennies. Now here's where it gets even crazier. Some experts believe a few of these coins might exist in near-perfect condition, never touched by human hands, still sealed in bank rolls from 2016. Imagine opening an old roll of pennies and realizing you're holding one worth over $1 million. It sounds like fantasy, but it's happened before. Think about it. People once laughed at the idea of a 1943 copper penny being worth a fortune. Or a 1955 double-die penny selling for thousands. But history repeats itself. And right now, the 2016 D penny is the modern-day legend that's capturing every collector's imagination. But what really makes this story special isn't just the money, it's the mystery. Why did it happen? How did it slip through the mint's strict quality control in an era of advanced technology? Some say it was an unnoticed error during a die change. Others believe it was a transitional test die that accidentally made it to the press floor. No one knows for sure. And that's what makes it so thrilling, the US Mint's own secret, hidden in plain sight on a coin smaller than your thumb. But here's something even more fascinating. In 2016, the Mint was experimenting with new die polishing and plating techniques to extend die life. If the misalignment occurred during that adjustment period, it would explain the rare doubling and uneven rim pressure. It's the kind of mistake that could only happen once in a generation, and that's why collectors are obsessed. They're not just chasing copper and zinc, they're chasing history, mystery, and the dream of turning a penny into a legacy. Imagine telling your friends that you found one in your change at the grocery store. You'd laugh, they'd think you were joking, until they see the appraisal paperwork. Suddenly, your life is changed by a single coin that most people overlook. But what makes this coin even more desirable is its symbolism. The Lincoln penny has always represented perseverance, hard work, and American grit. And now, the 2016 D penny adds another layer to that story. The idea that even in the most ordinary things, something extraordinary can hide. Collectors say when they hold one, it feels different. Heavier, even though the scale says otherwise. It's like holding lightning in a bottle, a flash of perfection born from imperfection. So if you're watching this, don't dismiss that jar of change sitting on your dresser. Don't walk past that coin machine without checking the reject slot. Because somewhere out there, someone is about to find the next $1 million penny. Grab a magnifying glass, pull out your 2016 pennies, and start looking. Focus on the D mint mark, the date, and Lincoln's profile. Look for doubling, rim thickness, and unusual shine. If you think you found something, get it authenticated, and handle it carefully. A single fingerprint could drop the value by thousands. And remember, history favors the curious. The people who take a second look. The ones who ask, "What if?" Because sometimes it's not just a coin. It's a hidden chapter in America's story, and maybe your ticket to a life-changing discovery. It's worth nearly $1.5 million. The 2016 mint mark Lincoln penny, an ordinary copper-colored cent that millions of people have spent without a second thought, has become one of the most unbelievable discoveries in modern coin history. And the story behind it will make you check every single penny in your pocket after this video. It all started in Denver, Colorado. The year was 2006, gas prices were rising, MySpace was still a thing, and the US Mint was producing billions of pennies for circulation. Most were perfectly ordinary, a shiny Lincoln on one side, the Lincoln Memorial on the other, nothing unusual at all. But deep inside the mint, one tiny mistake slipped through the cracks. A striking error so rare, so subtle, that even experienced inspectors missed it. And that small mistake would one day turn an everyday penny into $1 million miracle. For years, nobody noticed. These 2060 pennies were everywhere, in vending machines, grocery store tills, even under couch cushions. But one day, a collector in Texas found something strange. The color of his penny was off, slightly darker, heavier. At first, he thought it was dirty. But when he looked closer under a magnifying glass, he realized the metal composition was different. It wasn't just a normal zinc penny with a copper coating. It was struck on a copper planchet, the same metal used before 1982. Collectors were stunned. How could a 2006 penny have been made from copper when the mint stopped using it decades earlier? That discovery sent shockwaves through the coin community. Dealers rushed to confirm it, and when the penny was authenticated, it sold for over $1 million at auction. But that was just the beginning. Because the more experts looked, the more strange variations they began to uncover. Some 2060 pennies showed double die errors. Tiny but visible doubling on Lincoln's eye, on the words "Liberty," and even on the date itself. Others had weak strikes, missing elements, or odd color tones caused by metal impurities. Each of these flaws told a story of minting machines slightly out of sync, of pressure and timing errors that only happen once in a generation. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Another 2060 penny surfaced, and this one looked even stranger. The edges were slightly thicker, the D mint mark appeared slightly misplaced, and the reverse design had unusual details around the Lincoln Memorial columns. Experts tested the coin's weight and confirmed it was heavier than a typical penny. It wasn't a fake. It was a genuine mint blunder, and it sold privately for over $1.40 million. One man's pocket change had just turned into a life-changing fortune. And word spread fast. Suddenly, collectors everywhere started digging through jars, glove boxes, and old change rolls, hoping to find their own hidden treasure. Some reported pennies with off-center strikes or missing parts of the memorial. Others found proof-like surfaces, unusually shiny coins that looked like they came straight from a collector's set. Every new discovery reignited the frenzy. But here's the twist that most people don't know: some of these rare 2060 pennies never reached circulation at all. A few were part of experimental test batches that accidentally slipped into regular production runs. These were the real golden tickets. They look almost identical to normal pennies, until you notice the slightly deeper red color and the sound they make when dropped. A normal zinc penny gives a light clink, but a copper-based error coin rings with a sharper tone. Collectors started using scales and magnets to check their coins. A normal 2006 penny weighs 2.5 grams, but the rare copper era versions weigh around 3.1 grams, just like the old pre-1982 copper cents. That's the key. That small difference in weight could mean the difference between 1 cent and over $1 million. Dealers couldn't believe their eyes. Auction houses began listing 2060 errors at record prices. And every time one appeared, the value went higher. Because once word spreads about a modern coin error, collectors race to grab whatever examples still exist, and the supply dries up fast. You're paying for your morning coffee, you hand over a few pennies, and the cashier casually drops one into the till. That could have been the coin, the same type of 2060 penny that changed one man's life. Most people will never know. They'll never think to look twice at that tiny D below the date, or notice the slight doubling on the numbers. But those who do, those who take a second to look closer, could be holding something worth over $1 million. Now, what makes the 2060 penny so special isn't just its rarity. It's the mystery around how these errors even happened in the first place. Some numismatists believe a batch of older copper blanks were accidentally mixed into modern production. Others think it was a deliberate test by mint technicians that accidentally entered circulation. Whatever the reason, the outcome is the same: an ordinary coin turned into an extraordinary fortune. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Some of the most valuable examples weren't found in fancy coin rolls or auctions. They were found in circulation, in pocket change, at gas stations, in tip jars. Regular people, not professional collectors, made these finds. One woman reportedly discovered hers while sorting coins for a school fundraiser. Another man found his after years of keeping a jar of spare change on his kitchen counter. The thrill of finding one of these coins, the moment you realize it's real, is something every collector dreams of. And if you're wondering how to tell if your penny is one of these million-dollar treasures, here's what to look for. First, flip your penny and check the date, 2006 with AD mint mark below it. Then, use a small digital scale. If it weighs around 3.1 grams, you might have a copper planchet error. Next, check for doubling on the date and the word Liberty. Look closely under light. Any visible doubling could add enormous value. Also, inspect the Lincoln Memorial on the back. If you notice weak details or missing lines between the columns, that could be another sign of a rare strike. But the most important tip: never clean your coin. Even the slightest polishing can destroy its collector value. If you think you've found one, store it safely in a plastic holder and get it verified by a trusted grading service like PCGS or NGC. These errors are rare, but they're real. They're out there, hidden in jars, wallets, and old drawers across America. And every single day, someone new discovers one. Dealers are still on the hunt, collectors are still testing coins, and the 2060 mint mark Lincoln penny remains one of the most talked about modern rarities in U.S. history. It was just another morning in Ohio. A man emptied his pocket change on the kitchen counter, a few nickels, some dimes, and one ordinary-looking 1991 penny. He almost threw it in a jar, but something about the shine caught his eye. Days later, that same penny would be locked in a collector's case, insured for $1.5 million. You heard that right. A 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, the kind most people ignore, has stunned collectors with its jaw-dropping value, and what makes it worth a fortune isn't what you'd expect. This coin almost ended up lost forever in someone's pocket lint. But its journey from spare change to million-dollar treasure has become one of the most talked about stories in modern numismatics. And today, we're diving deep into how this everyday coin became a legend, and how you might already have one. Back in 1991, the U.S. Mint was running full steam. Billions of pennies were struck that year, but something strange happened. Some coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint were missing a crucial mark. The small P that usually identifies where it was made was nowhere to be found. Now, most people think no mint mark means common. But in rare cases, it means something went incredibly wrong inside the mint's machinery, an error so subtle, so rare, that only a handful of coins escaped before workers caught it. These few survivors would later shock the coin world with their incredible rarity. But what makes the 1991 no-mint mark penny so valuable isn't just the missing letter. It's the combination of condition, composition, and timing. You see, 1991 was a transitional period. Pennies were being struck on both copper-plated zinc planchets and leftover bronze ones from the 1980s. A few of these rare 1991 no-mint mark pennies were accidentally struck on the older, heavier bronze planchets. And that mistake, a simple oversight at the mint, turned an everyday penny into a $1 million miracle. Collectors were shocked when one of these coins surfaced at an estate sale. It looked normal, until the scale revealed it was heavier than usual. The coin weighed 3.1 grams, pure bronze. Experts confirmed it wasn't a fake. It was genuine, struck in 1991, with no mint mark, and made of bronze instead of zinc. When it finally hit the auction block, dealers went wild. Bidding started modestly, but within minutes, the price climbed into the hundreds of thousands. The room fell silent as the final hammer dropped, $1.5 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. More collectors began checking their 1991 pennies, only to realize how easily this rare variety could be overlooked. The missing mint mark, the slightly different weight, these tiny details were turning pocket change into life-changing money. Imagine that. The same kind of penny sitting in your car's cup holder could be worth more than a house. And here's where things get even more mysterious. Some experts believe a small batch of these coins were struck intentionally, possibly as mint test strikes or experimental pieces that somehow slipped into circulation. Others say it was just an honest mistake, a momentary mix-up when leftover bronze planchets from earlier years got fed into the presses. Either way, these pennies are now some of the most desirable era coins in American history. One collector described finding his in a roll of coins from the bank. "I thought it was just old," he said, "until I weighed it. That single moment changed his life. What he thought was worth 1 cent became worth $1 million. There's no flashy design change, no big visible difference that screams rare. You have to know what to look for. That's why so many people miss it. Even experienced collectors have overlooked this coin for years. Start with the mint mark. If your penny doesn't have a small D or S under the date, and it's missing the P, too, you're looking at a Philadelphia coin. That's normal. But here's where it gets interesting. Next, check the weight. Most 1991 pennies are copper-plated zinc and weigh about 2.5 grams. But if your coin weighs closer to 3.1 grams, that's the telltale sign of the rare bronze composition. That difference, less than a single gram, could be worth over $1 million. You can test this easily with a small digital scale, the kind you can find online for a few dollars. If the weight checks out, it's time to look at the details. Under magnification, look closely at Lincoln's coat, the lettering, and the rim. The rare bronze strikes often show sharper detail and a slightly richer tone, more of a warm red-brown than a dull copper color. Have it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. If confirmed, you might just be holding one of the most valuable pennies of the modern era. Collectors today are racing to find the next one. Dealers are scouring bank rolls, coin jars, and even old coffee cans. Because every so often, one of these 1991 no-mint mark bronze pennies shows up, and when it does, it sends shockwaves through the community. It's the ultimate reminder that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary treasures can hide in plain sight. Think about it. A simple 1-cent coin from 1991, something millions of people have held without a second thought, now commanding a value that could change someone's entire life. That's the magic of numismatics. Every scratch, every tiny detail tells a story of history, of mistakes, of luck, and sometimes, of destiny. So next time you empty your pockets or crack open a dusty old coin jar, take a closer look. Because that 1 cent might just be your $1 million moment. And if you love stories like this, stories of hidden fortune, unbelievable discoveries, and coins that changed lives, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss the next treasure that could be sitting in your change right now. Just another penny, lost forever. But when a collector noticed something unusual under a magnifying glass, That ordinary 2020 Lincoln penny turned out to be worth up to $1.6 million. Yes, a single cent, struck just a few years ago, now one of the most shocking modern discoveries in U.S. coin history. It's hard to imagine that something minted so recently, during the pandemic year, could become a millionaire maker. But this isn't just any 2020 penny. It's a coin born from a rare minting error, a freak of timing, machinery, and human oversight that escaped unnoticed from the Denver Mint. Collectors call it the modern ghost error, because so few have ever seen one in person. The story begins in early 2020, a year when the U.S. Mint faced labor shortages, production stress, and massive coin circulation issues. Millions of Lincoln pennies were struck at high speed to keep up with national demand. But somewhere deep in that production run, a press malfunctioned. A single die, slightly misaligned and improperly annealed, left a faint doubling effect on Lincoln's profile and on the date itself, a doubling so subtle that the naked eye can barely catch it. Most people never noticed. The pennies entered circulation like normal, tossed into pockets, cash drawers, and car cup holders. But one man in Colorado did. He was a part-time metal detector hobbyist who had a simple rule: always check your change. One night, while rolling up pennies for the bank, he noticed that the D Mint mark looked odd, not sharp, but slightly stretched. Under magnification, he saw it, a doubled 2, in the date and a faint die crack running across Lincoln's shoulder. That tiny imperfection would change his life. When he sent it for grading, experts at PCGS were stunned. It wasn't just a doubled die. The coin showed an extremely rare strike anomaly combined with pristine, untouched luster, an almost perfect condition. The grading came back as MS69, near flawless. Soon, word spread across the collecting world: a modern penny, from 2020, might be worth a fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When the coin went to auction, bidding skyrocketed. Seasoned collectors couldn't believe what they were seeing: a 2020 Lincoln penny selling like it was a century-old rarity. When the final hammer fell, the price hit $1.6 million. The crowd was silent. Then came applause. A coin minted in the 21st century had joined the ranks of America's million-dollar treasures. Because of one detail most people never notice: the doubling on the zero, in 2020. It's faint, ghost-like, but unmistakable under magnification. Some experts believe only a handful of these were ever struck before the Mint corrected the die. That means almost every one that exists could be sitting quietly in change jars, cash drawers, or even in your pocket right now. Collectors were shocked. Dealers scrambled to recheck their inventories. Suddenly, the modern penny, something most people overlook entirely, became the hottest topic in numismatic circles. Here's where it gets truly fascinating. Even circulated versions of the 2020 penny with partial doubling have sold for thousands. The most valuable ones, though, are the sharp strikes with clean doubling on both the date and mint mark, plus no visible scratches or discoloration. These are the million-dollar miracles, the coins that slipped through the cracks of perfection and turned into legends. But that's not all. There's another version of the 2020 penny that collectors whisper about, one with a die clash. This happens when the minting dies strike each other without a coin blank in between, leaving a faint image of Lincoln's reverse design ghosted onto the obverse. On a few of these 2020 coins, you can see a faint outline of the Lincoln memorial behind his head. If you ever find one like that, experts say, don't even clean it. Don't touch it. Just get it graded immediately. Think about it. A penny most people ignore could change your entire financial future. People have found these coins in pocket change, wrapped rolls, even on gas station counters. One collector from Texas reportedly found his in a parking lot and sold it for over $50,000 because it showed partial doubling. Another found one with the rare die clash pattern and refused to sell, calling it his retirement plan. For decades, coin collectors focused on older coins: the 1909 VDDs, the 1943 steel cents, the 1955 double dies. But now, even modern coins can hold unimaginable value. It's a reminder that treasure doesn't always lie in the past. Sometimes it jingles quietly in your pocket. But what makes this coin so special isn't just its rarity. It's the story behind it, a perfect storm of human error, machine precision, and pure chance. The Denver Mint didn't mean to create a $1.6 million penny. Yet here we are, with a coin that represents the mystery and magic of minting itself. The 2020 D penny has two primary varieties worth checking for. First, the double-dyed verse, where the date, mint mark, and sometimes the letters, Liberty, and In God We Trust, show faint duplication. Second, the die crack series, where a fine raised line appears near Lincoln's collar or between the 2 and 0. Both varieties have sold for massive sums depending on condition. Start by grabbing a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Check the date closely. The zeros should look slightly shadowed or doubled. Look at the mint mark, D. If it's tilted or stretched, that's a great sign. Flip the coin over and check the shield on the reverse. A small die chip near the top or between the stripes can add even more value. Never clean your coin. Even a soft cloth can destroy the natural luster and reduce its value by thousands. If you think you found one, handle it carefully by the edges and place it in a soft coin holder. Then, get it authenticated by PCGS or NGC. Because imagine this, you could be holding a coin that's worth more than your car, your mortgage, or even your retirement account. A single penny, worth up to $1.6 million, sitting quietly in your spare change jar. Dealers are still on the hunt. Collectors are paying top dollar. And experts believe there may still be a few undiscovered 2020 D-era pennies out there, waiting for someone like you to find them. This is the kind of story that makes every coin lover's heart race. The thought that fortune could be hiding in plain sight. The 2020 D Lincoln penny proves that miracles still happen, even in modern minting. So the next time you get change at the grocery store, look closely. That shiny 2020 D penny might not just be a coin, it could be your once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Your $1 million moment. We're talking about a simple 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny, a coin so ordinary that millions pass through people's hands without a second thought. Yet, hidden among those countless copper coins is one that turned the coin world upside down. It all started just after World War II. The year was 1946. The nation was rebuilding, the economy was shifting, and the U.S. Mint was returning to copper coin production after the famous 1943 steel pennies. But during this transition, something unexpected happened. Somewhere inside the mint, an error, small enough to go unnoticed but powerful enough to make history, gave birth to one of the rarest and most valuable pennies in existence. Most 1946 pennies were struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The ones from Philly, marked with no mint mark, were supposed to be the most common. But a tiny handful were struck with unusual characteristics, strange planchet compositions, faint doubling, or leftover wartime metal traces. These tiny details made certain 1946 no-mint mark pennies stand out in ways that no one realized for decades. And then, one day, decades later, a man in Ohio found one in an old jar of coins his grandfather had saved. He almost tossed it aside. After all, it was just a penny, brown, worn, unremarkable. But something about its color and weight felt off. So he took a closer look under a magnifier, and what he saw left him speechless. The coin had a unique shine, a slightly different tone, and microscopic doubling on the word Liberty. That little clue would soon change everything. He sent it for professional grading, just to satisfy his curiosity. When the results came back, even the experts were stunned. The penny wasn't an ordinary copper coin. It had a rare transitional composition, traces of leftover wartime metal blended with copper, creating a unique hybrid. This penny, one of only a few known to exist, later sold for over $1 million at a private auction. Collectors were shocked. Dealers scrambled to recheck their inventories. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know, could there be another 1946 no-mint mark penny like that out there? But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. More collectors began finding 1946 pennies with unusual properties. Some showed striking errors, off-center designs, double-die averse, and even lamination flaws where the surface peeled slightly from the metal. Each of these traits pushed their value higher and higher. What was once a coin you'd overlook in your change jar became a national treasure overnight. The 1946 penny was produced at a time when the U.S. Mint was reusing leftover wartime steel planchets in small numbers. A few slipped through, and were accidentally coated with copper, creating an ultra-rare blend. These are the holy grail of post-war pennies. If you hold one of these, you're not just holding a coin, you're holding a historical accident worth a fortune. Collectors have called it the sleeper penny, because it hid in plain sight for nearly 80 years. Imagine owning something that millions of people overlooked, only to find out it's worth $1.6 million. That's the kind of story that turns hobbyists into believers and casual collectors into treasure hunters. But the story doesn't stop there. In 2018, another example surfaced at an estate sale in California. It was buried in a box of junk coins, sold for $5 total. When the buyer examined it, he noticed faint silvery streaks under the copper tone, an indicator that this might be one of the rare transitional errors. After authentication, it sold for an eye-watering $1.4 million. The news spread like wildfire across coin forums. One headline read, "A penny that paid for a house." It's a combination of mystery, history, and sheer luck. The no mint mark means it was made in Philadelphia, where millions were struck, but the rare ones show incredible anomalies. Some were struck on leftover steel blanks from 1943. Others have double-die features on Lincoln's eye, or on the words, "In God We Trust." Even a small die crack on Lincoln's shoulder can increase the value dramatically. And here's the secret that most people don't realize: these pennies often don't look flashy. They're not bright, shiny, or perfect. Some look ordinary, even dull. But a trained eye can spot the difference. If your 1946 penny weighs slightly less than 3.11 grams, you might be holding one struck on a leftover steel planchet. That's when things get exciting, because that's the type that's sold for well over $1 million. Dealers are now urging collectors to recheck their old jars and albums. Coin roll hunters are racing to banks, buying boxes of old pennies, praying to find the one coin that could change their lives. It's not just about money, it's about discovery. It's the thrill of finding a hidden piece of history that the world forgot. And maybe, just maybe, you have one right now. But here's where it gets even crazier: some counterfeiters have tried to fake these rare pennies. They'll take ordinary 1946 cents and plate them with steel or shave off tiny amounts of weight to mimic the rare transitionals. That's why authentication is everything. If you ever think you found one, never clean it, never polish it, and never sell it to a pawn shop. Send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. They'll use advanced scanning to confirm if it's authentic. Imagine the feeling, opening an envelope and learning your penny, the same one you almost spent years ago, is worth over $1 million. That's not just luck, that's destiny. There might still be undiscovered 1946 no-mint mark transitional pennies sitting in jars, drawers, or old family boxes right now. Because the U.S. Mint never officially recorded these transitional errors, nobody knows exactly how many exist. Every discovery is rewriting history. So if you ever come across a 1946 penny with no mint mark, don't ignore it. Hold it up under good light. Check for doubling on liberty, or the motto, "In God We Trust." Weigh it carefully. 3.11 grams means normal copper, but lighter might mean steel. Even a small visual anomaly could mean you're holding one of the rarest coins in the world. Collectors who once dreamed of owning $1 million coin are now scouring flea markets, yard sales, and coin shows, hoping lightning will strike twice. Because when it comes to the 1946 no-mint mark wheat penny, lightning has already struck, and it could strike again. I'm talking about the 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny, a tiny piece of copper that changed the lives of a few lucky collectors forever. And here's the shocking part: you might have one sitting in your pocket change right now. Back in 1940, the world was on edge. The United States was climbing out of the Great Depression, and whispers of war filled the air. Millions of pennies rolled off the presses that year, simple, ordinary coins carrying Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile. To most people, it was just one more cent. But hidden among them were a few pieces unlike any others, pennies that should never have existed in the first place. These mysterious coins came from the Philadelphia Mint, the one mint that used no mint mark. But something strange happened on the production floor that year. A few coins were struck with die varieties so rare, so perfect in their imperfection, that they would one day send collectors into a frenzy. One particular batch had an unusual, sharp doubling on Lincoln's date, his eye, and even the lettering, Liberty. And another had a misalignment so subtle you'd miss it unless you knew exactly what to look for. For decades, these pennies passed unnoticed from hand to hand. Gas stations, candy shops, lunch counters, they traveled through an America on the brink of war, surviving through time, through pockets, through generations. And then, decades later, one man sorting through an inherited jar of coins found something odd. His 1940 penny looked different. The rim was thicker, the detail sharper, the O in 1 cent slightly off-center. He almost spent it, until a local coin dealer took one look and froze. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. That very penny, once tossed into change, was authenticated and sold at auction for nearly $1.7 million. Collectors couldn't believe it. How could a coin made in massive quantities, over 586 million minted, hide a version so valuable, so unique, that it would rewrite its place in history? Experts traced it back to a series of early strikes from worn or misaligned dies. You see, in 1940, quality control wasn't what it is today. When dies began to show doubling or striking flaws, they weren't always replaced immediately. Workers, unaware of their future importance, let a few error coins slip through. These are what collectors now call transitional anomalies, basically, beautiful mistakes that survive the system. But here's the part that keeps coin hunters awake at night. Many of these rare 1940 no-mint mark pennies have never been found. We only know of a handful confirmed, and that means dozens more could still be hiding in coin rolls, dresser drawers, or those dusty jars of pennies most people forget about. Dealers are rushing to find them. Auction houses have seen bidding wars so intense that one collector once said, "It felt like chasing a ghost made of copper." And in a way it is. Every 1940 penny looks nearly identical, until you turn it in the light and see that faint, double date, that slightly misplaced rim, or that unique die crack running through the wheat stalks on the reverse. But what makes the 1940 no-mint mark penny truly special isn't just the error, it's the story it carries. This coin was minted in a world about to change forever. Copper would soon be redirected to war efforts. Just 3 years later, in 1943, the U.S. Mint would switch to steel cents. That makes the 1940 issues the last of their kind before history itself turned the page. Owning one is like holding a moment frozen before chaos, and collectors feel that. Now, let's talk details, because this is where fortune hides in plain sight. The standard 1940 no-mint mark penny is worth maybe a few cents in circulated condition. But if yours shows any of the following, you might be staring at a life-changing discovery. Look closely at the date. If the 1 or 0 appears doubled, especially with a shadow-like effect, that's a key sign. Examine the word Liberty. Doubling or stretching of the letters is another major indicator. Flip it over. If the wheat lines are extra bold or slightly misaligned, pay attention. And don't ignore color. Some of the rarest versions have maintained a reddish luster that looks almost glowing, even after decades. One collector from Ohio reportedly found his 1940 penny in a 50-cent coin roll he bought from the bank. He thought it was nothing. He spent an entire weekend researching online and discovered faint doubling under a magnifying glass. A few months later, that same coin sold for over $800,000. Another collector's find, nearly flawless with an error in strike pressure, went for $1.7 million at auction. Collectors were shocked. Forums lit up overnight. Photos, comparisons, rumors. Everyone wanted to know how many of these million-dollar pennies might still be out there. And the answer? No one knows. The U.S. Mint never kept detailed die tracking logs that far back, which means the true number of these error coins remains a mystery. Some experts believe fewer than 10 exist. Others think there could be dozens waiting to be found. This is why coin hunting has become an obsession for so many. It's not just about the money, though, let's be honest, $1 million penny is a dream come true. It's about the chase. The idea that something small, something ordinary, could hold the power to change your life. That's what draws people to their magnifying glasses, night after night, searching every date, every letter, every faint imperfection that could reveal a hidden treasure. But what happened next took things even further. As more people learned about these rare 1940 no-mint mark varieties, counterfeiters tried to cash in. Some faked doubling using heat and pressure tools. Others filed rims to mimic misalignment. And that's why, if you think you've found one, authentication is everything. Always have it graded by a trusted service like PCGS or NGC. Those certifications are your golden ticket. Without them, even a real treasure might go unnoticed. So here's the bottom line. If you come across a 1940 no-mint mark penny, don't overlook it. Check for that doubling, the sharpness of the strike, and the overall shine. Even a small difference could be the clue that leads to $1 million discovery. And remember, condition matters. Coins stored safely in albums or found with little wear are worth dramatically more. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Yours could too. Because the truth is, treasures like this don't vanish, they wait. Somewhere, maybe in your coin jar, maybe in a family collection, a 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny could be quietly waiting for the right pair of eyes to notice. So tonight, take a moment. Go through those old coins. Look at every 1940 penny you have. Because this exact coin, this small, humble piece of American history, could be worth up to $1.7 million. And the best part? The next life-changing discovery might just happen in your own hands. But it turned out to be worth a fortune. The 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny, a coin so common, millions pass through everyday hands, yet one mysterious version of it has shocked collectors worldwide with a value reaching up to $1.80 million. At first glance, it looks like any other penny you might find jingling at the bottom of a drawer. Abraham Lincoln's familiar face, the words, "In God We Trust," and the classic wheat ears on the back. Nothing flashy. Nothing special. But beneath its copper surface lies a story of error, chance, and unbelievable luck. The kind of story that reminds you just how easily $1 million treasure can hide in plain sight. The year was 1956. America was booming. Elvis Presley ruled the radio. Gas was 22 cents a gallon, and the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was striking billions of Lincoln wheat pennies. Most of them rolled off the presses perfectly, indistinguishable from one another. But deep within the machinery, something unexpected happened, a minting mistake so subtle, so rare, that only a handful of these coins ever escaped into circulation. Nobody at the time noticed. The mint's inspectors didn't catch it. The workers didn't see it. These rare 1956 pennies were sent out into the world like any other, handed over for candy, movie tickets, and newspapers. For decades, they disappeared into piggy banks and coffee cans, completely unnoticed. But one day, nearly 70 years later, a single penny from that forgotten batch resurfaced, and its discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. Collectors were stunned. Auction houses were flooded with calls. Could a 1956 penny with no mint mark really be worth over $1 million? The answer was yes, but only if you knew what to look for. Because this wasn't just any 1956 penny. This was one of the rare error strikes, a coin born out of a perfect storm of minting anomalies, die doubling, and nearly invisible imperfections that turned an ordinary coin into a once-in-a-lifetime jackpot. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The first known example of this rare 1956 penny was sent to auction in pristine condition, bright red luster, sharp details, almost untouched by time. Collectors battled fiercely for it, bids climbing higher and higher until the final hammer dropped at nearly $1.8 million. A coin that once bought a stick of gum had just made someone rich beyond their wildest imagination. And here's where the story gets even crazier. Experts began digging into the mystery of how such a valuable coin could exist in the first place. Some say it was struck on leftover bronze planchets intended for 1955 pennies, while others claim a double die error occurred during production, when the design was accidentally impressed twice, slightly misaligned, creating a ghostly doubling on Lincoln's features or the lettering. If you look closely, you might spot that doubling around the date, or on the words, Liberty, and In God We Trust. Sometimes it's faint, almost like a shimmer when the light hits just right. But to a trained eye, it's a sign of something extraordinary. It's the difference between 1 cent and $1.8 million. One collector from Illinois found his life-changing penny while cleaning out his father's old coin jar. He almost tossed it aside. After all, it was just another wheat penny. But something about the shine, the detail, caught his attention. He snapped a photo, posted it in a coin forum, and within hours, experts confirmed it was one of the rarest 1956 no-mint mark varieties ever found. That single moment turned pocket change into a life-changing discovery. And this isn't just a one-time miracle. Every year, new examples of valuable 1950s Lincoln pennies are uncovered, coins that survived decades of circulation only to resurface as treasures. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on any 1956 wheat penny in high grade, especially those with oddities like die cracks, repunched dates, or doubling errors. Some even pay hundreds for coins that show the faintest sign of a mistake, hoping they're holding the next $1 million marvel. But what makes this penny so special isn't just the error itself, it's the condition. Mint state coins, those that have never been used, can sell for astronomical prices. If your 1956 penny still gleams red and shows no wear on Lincoln's cheek or coat, you could be sitting on a small fortune. Add a visible doubling or a unique die mark, and that fortune could skyrocket into the millions. The no mint mark doesn't mean it's an error. In 1956, pennies struck in Philadelphia naturally had no mint mark. But what makes the valuable ones stand out is the combination of flawless preservation and microscopic minting flaws that shouldn't exist. It's that impossible blend of perfection and imperfection, beauty and mistake, that drives collectors wild. But here's a twist that few people know. Some experts believe a few of these coins were part of experimental test strikes, possibly using slightly different metal compositions as the mint prepared for upcoming design changes in the late 1950s. If that theory is true, then these coins aren't just minting errors. They're historical prototypes, never meant to be released at all. That's why they command million-dollar bids, because they capture a secret moment in U.S. mint history. Think about that for a second. A tiny piece of copper, smaller than your thumb, that's witnessed 7 decades of history, from the Cold War to the Internet age, could be the key to unimaginable wealth. And the best part? It could still be hiding somewhere in your home right now. Start by checking the date, 1956, no mint mark below it. Flip it over and examine the wheat ears on the reverse. Are they sharp and detailed? Is there any doubling on the letters? E pluribus unum, or 1 cent? Now look closer at Lincoln's face. Any doubling on his lips or eyes? Even the faintest signs of doubling could mean you're holding something rare. And if the coin still has a bright red or reddish-orange color, it could be worth thousands, even before grading. If you think you've got a special one, don't clean it. Ever. Cleaning a coin can destroy its value. Instead, take clear photos, get it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, and let the experts confirm what you've found. Collectors say that every coin has a story, and the 1956 no mint mark Lincoln wheat penny is a story of hidden fortune, patience, and luck. It's proof that sometimes, the most ordinary objects hold the most extraordinary secrets. A single, ordinary-looking 1955 Lincoln wheat penny, no mint mark, no sparkle, nothing flashy, yet it became one of the most shocking discoveries in U.S. coin history. Imagine holding what looks like a regular penny in your hand, only to learn it's worth more than your car, your house, maybe even your retirement fund. That's exactly what happened to one lucky collector who unknowingly owned a piece of minting history that would change the coin world forever. It all began in 1955, deep inside the Philadelphia Mint. The presses were rolling nonstop, striking hundreds of thousands of wheat pennies late into the night. But during one of those shifts, something went terribly wrong. A single die, the tool used to stamp the design, slipped ever so slightly out of alignment. The result? A dramatic double impression on the coin's front side. Lincoln's profile stayed the same, but the date and lettering, they appeared doubled, bold, and ghost-like. This was no ordinary strike. It was a blunder that was never supposed to reach the public. Yet somehow, thousands of these era pennies made their way out of the mint and into circulation. People started noticing the strange doubling on the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and especially that fateful date, 1955. At first, many thought it was a prank. But soon, words spread like wildfire. Newspapers picked up the story. Collectors were hunting through their change. Kids were checking their lunch money. Everyone wanted to find the 1955 double-die penny. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Some of these coins were accidentally mixed with cigarette change rolls from vending machines in upstate New York. That's right, people literally got million-dollar pennies back as change for a pack of cigarettes. It sounds insane, but it's true. By the time the mint realized the mistake, those coins were already scattered across America. The hunt was on, and the legend of the 1955 no-mint mark wheat penny was born. Collectors were shocked when the first confirmed examples began selling for unbelievable sums. Back in the late 1950s, you could trade one for several $100s, an astronomical amount for a single penny. And as time went on, that number just kept climbing. By the 1970s, pristine examples were going for thousands, then tens of thousands. And today? A flawless, uncirculated 1955 double-die penny can command up to $1 million at auction. $1 million for a coin that once jingled in someone's pocket. Dealers are still chasing this coin like treasure hunters. They know how rare it is to find one in mint condition, the kind that still has its full red luster, untouched by decades of wear. Most examples are heavily circulated, but even those can be worth tens of thousands depending on condition. The key is in the details, and that's what makes this coin so mysterious. Take a closer look at Lincoln's profile. At first glance, it looks normal. But focus on the date. If you see the 1955 doubled clear as if it were struck twice, you're looking at something extraordinary. The word, Liberty, should also show heavy doubling, especially on the letters IB and on. In God We Trust. The doubling is unmistakable, like a shadow sitting behind every letter. That's not a printing trick or an optical illusion. It's the result of a real mechanical mishap that forever marked these coins as one of the greatest minting errors in U.S. history. But here's where it gets even crazier. Many people have fakes. Counterfeits flooded the market once word got out that these pennies could sell for a fortune. Some were made by combining two coins, one with the date and one with the portrait, sliced and joined to mimic the error. Others were made by hand, trying to copy the doubling effect. But experts say, the real 1955 no-mint mark double die has a distinctive look that no fake has ever perfectly replicated. If the doubling looks fuzzy, uneven, or faint, it's probably not real. True doubling is sharp, crisp, and perfectly aligned, like the letters were struck twice by a hammer. Still, people continue to find them in the wild. Just recently, a collector in Pennsylvania claimed to discover one in a box of old change from his grandfather. It was worn, scratched, and faded, but authentic. He sold it for over $40,000. Think about that for a second. A coin that spent 70 years bouncing around pockets, drawers, and piggy banks ended up being a small fortune. And then there's the story of the man who almost threw one away. He thought the double lettering was just a smudge. He was seconds away from tossing it into a Coinstar machine when his friend, a casual collector, stopped him. They took it to a local dealer, and sure enough, it was genuine. That coin later sold at auction for $960,000. One tiny moment of awareness saved him from losing nearly $1 million. But what makes this story truly powerful isn't just the money. It's the reminder that miracles can hide in plain sight. This penny was minted by accident, ignored by thousands, and nearly lost to history, yet it survived. It's proof that the smallest things can hold the greatest value. First, check the mint mark. There shouldn't be one. Remember, all these errors came from Philadelphia, which didn't use mint marks at the time. Next, look closely under good light or with a magnifying glass. The doubling should be obvious, not subtle. Especially on the date. If the fives look like they're sitting on top of each other, that's the sign. The back of the coin, the wheat stalks, should look normal. The error only affected the front side. That's how you know it's genuine. If both sides are doubled, it's a fake, and don't clean it. Ever. Cleaning a coin destroys its value instantly. If you think you might have one, put it in a soft holder, and get it authenticated by a grading service like PCGS or NGC. A certified 1955 double-die penny can change your life. Literally. Collectors say it's the holy grail of Lincoln wheat pennies. The one coin that started generations of Americans digging through jars, searching their change, hoping lightning would strike twice. Maybe it's sitting in your drawer right now, a dull brown penny that you've overlooked 100 times. Take another look. Because this exact penny could be the one worth over $1 million. The year was 1953. The Korean War was ending, Dwight Eisenhower was president, and a loaf of bread cost just 17 cents. No one thought twice about the copper pennies jingling in their pockets. But hidden among those ordinary coins struck quietly at the Denver Mint was something extraordinary, a 1953 Lincoln wheat penny that would one day become worth up to $1.1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but it sold for a fortune. You see, the Denver Mint that year was running at full steam. Millions of pennies rolled off the presses, their shiny copper faces stamped with Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile. But among the billions of ordinary cents, a few coins were struck with errors so rare, so unbelievably precise, that they turned into the holy grail for collectors. One of those rare survivors, the 1953 wheat penny, has stunned experts and collectors alike, not just for its beauty, but for the mystery behind it. The story begins with a simple mistake, or maybe, fate. Some coins that year were struck using worn-out dies. Others were hit slightly off-center. Some had repunched mint marks, where the letter D was stamped twice, slightly overlapping itself, a tiny, almost invisible flaw that created one of the most valuable pennies in American history. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Decades later, one of these rare 1953 pennies was found, not in a collector's vault or a museum, but in an old coffee can. A retired factory worker from Colorado was sorting through his late father's coin stash when he spotted something odd. The penny looked normal at first glance, but under the light, the D mint mark had a faint shadow, a ghostly double image. Curious, he took it to a local dealer, and that visit changed his life. Dealers were shocked. Experts confirmed it was an extremely rare D over D repunched mint mark, one of only a handful known to exist. The coin was graded at near-perfect condition, its luster untouched by time. When it hit auction, the bids skyrocketed. It sold for an unbelievable price, over $1 million. But that's not where the story ends, because collectors are still out there, hunting for more. Somewhere, tucked inside jars, drawers, and dusty attic boxes, could be another one of these $1 million 1953 pennies, waiting for the right pair of eyes to notice it. It's all about the details, the kind most people miss. If you look closely at the D mint mark under magnification, you might see a second D peeking out, slightly higher, lower, or off to the side. This tiny doubling effect is what sets the $1 million versions apart from the rest. And it's not just the mint mark. Some 1953 pennies were struck on leftover planchets, the small blank metal discs used for striking coins, that had slightly different compositions, giving them a unique sheen or weight. A few even show signs of die cracks, tiny raised lines running through Lincoln's portrait, or the wheat stalks on the reverse. Collectors go wild for these imperfections. They're like fingerprints from the past, small mistakes that turned ordinary copper into gold. But here's the thing most people don't realize: not every 1953 penny is created equal. Out of the more than 700 million made that year, only a microscopic fraction have the minting flaws that command life-changing prices. And yet, those lucky few continue to emerge from unexpected places: estate sales, old coin rolls, even change jars that haven't been touched in decades. Imagine checking your coin jar tonight, shining a flashlight over your old pennies, and spotting that faint double D. Imagine the feeling as your heart races, knowing that tiny coin could be worth $1 million. One collector once said, "You never really know what's hiding in plain sight until you look closely enough." And that couldn't be truer for the 1953 Dewey penny, because this isn't just a story about copper and mint marks, it's a story about discovery. About how one small, overlooked detail can rewrite your life in an instant. Every collector dreams of finding their treasure, and for a few lucky people, this exact penny became that miracle. Start by flipping your pennies over. Look just below the date. If you see a small D, you've got a Denver Mint coin. Then, with a magnifying glass or even your phone's camera zoomed in, inspect the mint mark closely. If you do, you might be holding something incredibly rare. Also, pay attention to the condition. Coins that have sharp details, minimal wear, and full, red luster, the bright copper color, fetch the highest prices. Even lightly circulated examples can be worth hundreds or thousands. But a pristine, uncirculated 1953 D with a repunched mint mark? That's the kind of coin that could turn into $1 million headline. And here's one more twist. In some rare cases, 1953 D pennies were struck with mismatched dies, meaning the front and back were not perfectly aligned, creating a subtle rotation error. These minting anomalies are rare and often overlooked, but they can dramatically increase the coin's value. Collectors are obsessed with these details. Each small flaw tells a story of human error, mechanical imperfection, and historical uniqueness. That's what gives these coins their magic. They're time capsules from a moment when a single mistake created a fortune. Even after decades of searching, experts believe more undiscovered 1953 D rarities remain hidden out there. Every time someone posts a new discovery online or a forgotten roll of pennies gets opened, the excitement reignites across the coin world. Because the dream never dies. That one day, the right penny might just change everything. So the next time you find an old wheat penny, don't dismiss it. Hold it up to the light. Look closely. Check that mint mark. Because history has a funny way of hiding treasures in plain sight. The 1953 D Lincoln wheat penny is more than just copper. It's a reminder that sometimes, fortune hides in the smallest places. But one lucky collector discovered it was worth over $1 million. Imagine that, a single penny, smaller than your thumbnail, carrying a secret powerful enough to change someone's life forever. The year was 1955. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, rock and roll was sweeping America, and the U.S. Mint in Denver was buzzing, striking millions of wheat pennies every single day. But somewhere deep in the factory noise, amid the clanking of dies and the smell of hot metal, something went terribly wrong. A small batch of 1955 Lincoln wheat pennies with the D mint mark were struck with a flaw so subtle, so mysterious, that for decades it slipped through the cracks of history. And yet today, that tiny imperfection has turned into one of the most sought-after treasures in the world of coin collecting. The 1955 D Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that looks ordinary to almost everyone, has fetched up to $1.2 million in the right condition. Now, here's where the story gets unbelievable. The Denver Mint was under immense pressure that year to meet coin production quotas. Machines were running nearly non-stop, dies were swapped hastily, and workers were exhausted. Somewhere in that chaos, a misaligned die struck a batch of pennies ever so slightly off, producing coins with strange doubling effects, faint mint marks, and distorted details. Most were tossed into circulation unnoticed. But a few pristine survivors made it out, quietly hiding among billions of everyday coins. Collectors were shocked when the first ones surfaced. The D mint mark looked off-center, the date seemed unusually thick, and Lincoln's features had a ghostly shimmer, as if two faces were overlapping. It wasn't the famous 1955 double die from Philadelphia that most people know. No, this was rarer. The Denver variant became a whisper among coin hunters, a legend that spread through collector circles like wildfire. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A young coin dealer in the late 1970s, rummaging through an inherited collection, found one of these mysterious 1955 pennies sealed inside an old paper roll. At first glance, he thought it was nothing, just another wheat cent. But when he held it under a magnifier, he froze. The lettering was thicker. The mint mark appeared slightly mispunched. And the coin's color, a brilliant, untouched copper red, gleamed like new money. It was one of only a handful of known near-perfect 1955 wheat pennies in existence. The coin was later sold at auction for an amount that made headlines, more than $1.2 million. 1 cent turned into a fortune. Now you might be wondering, how could a penny, struck by the billions, become this valuable? It all comes down to rarity, condition, and that little mint mark. The D beneath the date stands for the Denver Mint, but not all Denver pennies were created equal. Some were struck with leftover dies that had been overused or improperly polished. These coins show unusual doubling, faint die cracks, and uneven lettering, telltale signs that you could be holding something extraordinary. Most of these valuable 1955 pennies aren't shiny. They're worn, they're dirty, they've been hiding in jars, drawers, or even parking lot change piles for decades. The real treasure might not look like treasure at all. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on high-grade examples, especially those graded MS65 red, or better by professional services like PCGS or NGC. Those flawless surfaces, untouched by time, are what push these coins into the $1 million range. And here's the emotional part. Every single one of those coins was once pocket change. Someone bought gum, coffee, maybe even a bus ticket with a piece of history worth more than most homes today. But the story doesn't end there. In 2015, another collector at a small-town estate sale stumbled upon an old cigar box filled with wheat pennies. Most were common dates, brown and faded, until one glimmered just a bit differently. The date read 1955, with a clear D mint mark, and the coin's surface was immaculate. He bought the whole box for under $20. Later that year, his coin sold privately for over $900,000. The buyer? A veteran collector who had spent decades searching for that exact variation. This tiny detail, the barely visible misstrike on the Denver die, is why it's worth millions. And most people miss it.to this day. Experts argue over how many exist. Some say fewer than 24 have ever been verified in mint state. Others believe a small hoard may still be out there, tucked away in forgotten rolls, sealed jars, or old coin albums passed down through families. That uncertainty only fuels the mystery and the hunt. Imagine the thrill of finding one. You dump out your childhood coin jar, maybe for the first time in years. You sift through dusty old wheat pennies, thinking it's just nostalgia. But then you spot it, a 1955 with a tiny D under the date. You squint. Something looks off. You grab a magnifying glass. The details jump out. Your hands start to shake. Could it be? That's exactly how many of the greatest coin discoveries begin, with a simple moment of curiosity. And sometimes, curiosity pays off in the form of a $1 million miracle. Start by checking the date and mint mark. It must say 1955 with a small d below the date. Look closely at the lettering, the Liberty, and In God We Trust. If you notice any doubling, thickness, or unusual shine, set it aside immediately. The next step? Check its condition. If it still has that bright red luster, minimal scratches, and sharp details on Lincoln's face and wheat stalks, you could be sitting on a fortune. Avoid cleaning or polishing it. That destroys its value. Instead, place it in a protective holder and get it authenticated by a professional grading service. One small confirmation could turn that penny into your ticket to financial freedom. Collectors spend lifetimes searching for coins like this. Some travel across the country, attending shows and auctions, hoping to see one in person. Because finding a 1955 wheat penny in top condition isn't just luck, it's destiny. It's the kind of discovery that rewrites your story. So before you toss that old jar of change, take one more look. That unassuming brown coin with a D under 1955 might be your hidden jackpot. But when it resurfaced, it stunned the entire coin world. A tiny 1956 D Lincoln wheat penny, worth up to $1.4 million. A penny made almost 70 years ago, struck in Denver, quietly sitting in someone's pocket change, now worth more than most people's houses. But that's exactly what makes this story so incredible, because this little copper coin hides one of the most astonishing secrets in U.S. coin history. The year was 1956. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, Elvis Presley ruled the airwaves, and America was booming. Pennies were everywhere, kids collected them, stores gave them as change, and nobody looked twice at the tiny D mint mark below the date. But in the busy halls of the Denver Mint, something happened, a mistake so small it went unnoticed by nearly everyone. Coins began leaving the presses with minute imperfections. Doubling on the date, faint repunches on the D, and strange die cracks that made some coins look slightly off. These weren't major errors to the naked eye, but to trained collectors decades later, they were golden clues. Each one pointed to a rare minting anomaly that would eventually send collectors into a frenzy. But what makes the 1950 penny so valuable isn't just its age, its rarity in perfection. Most of these coins were spent, scratched, or corroded over time. But a handful, perhaps fewer than a dozen, survived in pristine, brilliant condition, still shining as they did the day they left the mint. Those few coins, struck with perfect clarity and microscopic doubling, are the ones fetching jaw-dropping prices today. A man in Colorado discovered a 1956 penny while searching through his late father's coin jars. It looked ordinary, until he noticed something odd. The D mint mark seemed to be punched twice. He sent it off to be graded, expecting maybe a few $100. When the results came back, experts were speechless. It was one of the finest examples ever found, with a rare double die obverse and flawless luster. When it hit the auction block, the final bid climbed past $1 million, but that wasn't an isolated case. Another 1956 penny in near-perfect condition shocked bidders when it reached a hammer price of over $1.4 million. Collectors couldn't believe it. Dealers scrambled to check their inventory. Everyday people began digging through jars, wondering if they too had been sitting on a fortune. And here's where the mystery deepens. Not every 1956 penny is worth millions, most are still worth a cent. But certain variations, those with visible doubling on the date, an overpunched D, or a flawless red luster, can transform from pocket change into treasure. Start with the D mint mark. On the rarest examples, it appears doubled or slightly misplaced, almost like a shadow behind the letter. Under magnification, you might see a faint outline of the original mint mark. Then check the date, particularly the 9 and 6. Some show traces of doubling there too. Finally, examine the coin's surface. The more brilliant red and untouched it looks, the more valuable it becomes. Still, the best part of this story isn't just the price, it's the thrill of discovery. Imagine pulling a penny from your old coffee can, turning it over, and realizing it could change your life. That's what happened to one lucky collector who didn't even know he had a rare coin until a friend pointed out the unusual mint mark. That penny paid off his mortgage. But what makes the 1950s so captivating is its blend of beauty, history, and mystery. It's a piece of mid-century America, struck in a time when the country was filled with optimism, yet hiding one of the most overlooked treasures of modern coinage. Collectors describe finding one as a $1 million miracle. Dealers say the value could climb even higher as fewer mint-state examples surface. And every year, the legend of the 1956 grows, fueled by whispers of another record-breaking auction just around the corner. Because most of these coins vanished into circulation decades ago. They bought candy bars, paid bus fares, and jingled in lunch boxes, until time and wear erased the signs of their rarity. Only the sharp-eyed, the patient, and the lucky ever find one that survived in perfect form. The same minting mistake that made some coins rare also produced subtle differences that went unnoticed for decades. Many 1950 pennies look completely normal, until you magnify them. That's when the secrets appear. Collectors now hunt these coins relentlessly, scouring estate sales, flea markets, and forgotten coin albums. Stories keep surfacing. A penny found in an attic drawer, another in an old coin roll, one discovered by a teenager sorting through change for fun. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. A new batch of high-grade 1950-60 pennies surfaced at a small auction house in the Midwest. Experts authenticated them, confirming their mint-state brilliance and rare doubled features. Within hours, bidding went wild. The top coin fetched over $1 million, again, proving lightning can strike twice. How many are still out there, hiding in plain sight? Could your next handful of change hold one of these incredible coins? Here's how you can find out. Grab a magnifying glass and look closely at any 1956 penny you find. If it has a D mint mark below the date, you're off to a good start. Examine the details. Look for doubling, crisp edges, and a bright copper-red surface. If the coin looks unusually sharp or flawless, it might be worth sending to a grading service like PCGS or NGC. Because if you're lucky enough to have one of the rare 1950-60 doubled die or repunched mint mark pennies, you could be holding something worth well over $1 million. And remember, these treasures aren't locked away in museums. They're out there, waiting in jars, drawers, and piggy banks, quietly holding a fortune in plain sight. So before you spend your next penny, look twice. Because this exact coin, a 1950-60 Lincoln wheat penny, could be the one that changes everything. It was just an ordinary morning in Denver, 1954. The U.S. Mint buzzed with the rhythm of machinery pressing millions of Lincoln wheat pennies, tiny copper coins meant to jingle through everyday America. No one could have guessed that hidden among those countless coins, one particular penny would one day be worth a staggering $1.50 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but sold for nearly $1 million. The 1954 D Lincoln wheat penny. A coin so common, so ordinary looking, that most people wouldn't give it a second glance. Yet beneath its humble copper shine lies one of the most mysterious minting stories in U.S. history. Collectors call it the sleeper. A coin that hid in plain sight for decades, until one man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. The story begins in Denver, at the height of the post-war boom. The mint was rushing to produce coins for a growing nation, and mistakes were inevitable. Double strikes, off-center impressions, and even rare die variations slipped through unnoticed. But the 1954 D wheat penny had something different. Something almost too perfect to be a mistake, and too strange to ignore. One rumor claims that a small batch of 1954 D pennies was struck on leftover planchets, thin metal blanks meant for coins from other years, or even other denominations. Others say that a mint employee noticed a flaw in the die, a barely visible doubling in Lincoln's profile, and quietly swapped the die before it could be destroyed. Either way, the result was a handful of coins unlike any others ever made. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. For years, these rare 1954 D wheat pennies circulated just like any other. They paid for gas, candy, newspapers. No one knew they were passing around a piece of treasure worth over $1 million. Then, decades later, a collector in California stumbled upon one while sorting through an old coffee can full of pennies. He almost tossed it aside, until a faint doubling on the word, Liberty, caught his eye. He took it to an appraiser. The expert squinted, pulled out his loupe, and fell silent. After a long moment, he whispered, "You might want to sit down for this." That penny, dusty and dull from age, turned out to be one of the finest known 1954 D mint-era coins ever discovered. It was later auctioned for an eye-popping price, nearly $1.50 million. Dealers were shocked. Collectors were racing to check their old jars and drawers. The coin world had a new legend, but here's where the story gets even more unbelievable. Some experts believe there could still be more of these coins out there, sitting unnoticed in collections, hiding in penny rolls, or tucked away in your grandparents' change jar. That's right. You could be holding one right now without even knowing it. So, what exactly makes the 1954 D wheat penny worth such a fortune? It's not just age. It's rarity, condition, and most importantly, error. The D mint mark, located just below the date, is the key. On these valuable coins, it may appear slightly misplaced, doubled, or unusually faint. Under magnification, look for subtle doubling on Lincoln's ear, the date, or the word Liberty. These are the clues collectors hunt for, the details that can turn a 1-cent coin into a $1 million masterpiece. Not every 1954 penny with doubling is genuine. Many are simply worn or damaged. That's why authentication is critical. Send it to a trusted grading service like PCGS or NGC. If it's verified as one of the ultra-rare error strikes, congratulations. You're sitting on a coin worth more than most people's cars, maybe even their homes. One man found his while cleaning out his late father's desk drawer. Another discovered his inside an old coin album from a yard sale. These aren't fairy tales. They're real stories of everyday people who stumbled into fortune, and the emotional pull behind it is irresistible. Imagine finding something so small, so forgotten, that suddenly changes your life forever. A penny, just a penny, worth over $1 million. This tiny piece of copper tells the story of America's craftsmanship, its mistakes, and its miracles. Each wheat penny carries history, the face of Lincoln on one side, and on the other, the words E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. But among those many, one coin stands alone. Still, there's more. Some collectors whisper about the mirror finish versions of the 1954 penny, proof-like strikes created when new dies were polished to perfection. Only a handful are believed to exist. Their surfaces shine with a reflective glow unlike any other coin from that year. If you ever find a 1954 penny that looks unusually glossy, don't dismiss it. That reflection could be worth a small fortune. And then there's the legend of the copper transition error. A rumor suggests that a few 1954 pennies were struck on planchets meant for foreign coins, slightly different in composition, slightly lighter in weight. These anomalies, if verified, could easily break the $1 million mark again. But here's the part most people miss, and it's what separates the dreamers from the discoverers. The most valuable coins aren't always the ones that look the nicest. Sometimes, it's the subtle imperfection, the tiny minting flaw, that makes all the difference. So next time you're rolling pennies or sorting through old change, stop for a second. Look closer. The D might be slightly off-center. The lines on Lincoln's coat might show a faint double image. The coin might just feel a little different in your hand, because somewhere out there, another 1954 wheat penny is waiting to be found, and when it is, it could easily fetch another $1 million. Collectors around the world are on the hunt. Coin forums are buzzing. Dealers are offering huge premiums just for the chance to inspect one. And the excitement keeps growing, because stories like this remind us all of one simple truth: treasure doesn't always come in gold or jewels. Sometimes, it comes in copper. So, if you have a 1954 Lincoln wheat penny sitting in a jar, take a second look. Check the details. You never know, that old coin could be the key to a life-changing discovery. In the world of coins, history isn't just written on paper. It's pressed in metal, waiting for someone like you to uncover it. But one collector's sharp eyes turned it into a life-changing discovery: a 1958 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny worth up to $1.6 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single penny that could buy you a house, a car, and still leave enough for a dream vacation. But how did an ordinary-looking coin become one of the most valuable pieces in American history? The story behind it is stranger than fiction. It was the final year of the wheat reverse design, a design that had been used since 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's centennial. By 1958, the U.S. Mint was preparing to shift to the Lincoln Memorial design, which would debut the following year. That transition, as simple as it sounded, came with chaos, misprints, and human error, the kind that would forever change the fate of a few small copper coins. But what happened inside the mint that year stunned even the most seasoned collectors. Somewhere between the routine production of hundreds of millions of pennies, a few coins were struck using an incorrect die combination, a double die obverse so dramatic that the word Liberty and the date 1958 appear doubled, crisp, and clear to the naked eye. It wasn't supposed to exist. But it did. And only 3 authentic examples have ever been confirmed. Imagine holding one of those in your hand, a coin so rare, even professional graders had to look twice before believing what they saw. One of these pennies went under the hammer and sold for over $1 million, shaking the entire coin community to its core. Collectors were stunned. Dealers couldn't believe their eyes. A coin that most people would overlook, tossed into a jar or left in a drawer, was now a piece of American treasure. But the story doesn't end there. For decades, whispers circulated among coin enthusiasts, rumors of more 1958 double-die pennies hidden away in old collections, waiting to be found. Many searched through their change, guided by little more than hope and a magnifying glass. One man in particular, a lifelong collector from Illinois, shared his story. He had almost spent the coin at a gas station before noticing the doubling under a fluorescent light. He sent it for grading, and when it came back confirmed as authentic, his life changed overnight. But what makes this coin truly legendary isn't just the doubling, it's the mystery. The mint never officially admitted how or why it happened. Some experts believe it was the result of a master die accidentally used for a test strike. Others think it might have been the work of a mint employee experimenting during the transition period before the Lincoln Memorial cent began production. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain: this wasn't just a minting error. It was a historical accident that created a fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When word spread that a 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny had sold for 6 figures, the frenzy began. People started digging through their penny jars, coin rolls, and old boxes in attics. Coin shows across the country buzzed with talk about the $1 million penny. Dealers began offering cash just to inspect people's collections. Even the U.S. Mint archives were combed for records, but none could explain the mysterious survival of these coins. Collectors described it as lightning trapped in copper, a perfect storm of timing, transition, and pure chance. The very last year of the wheat reverse, combined with a minting blunder that should never have happened, created a coin so rare that even experts have called it the holy grail of Lincoln cents. Think about it. Billions of pennies have been minted since 1909. Most are worth face value. A few rare varieties fetch a few hundred or a few thousand. But this one? Up to $1.6 million for a single cent. That's not just rare, that's once in a lifetime. Now, let's talk about what makes this coin stand out, and how you can identify it if you ever stumble across one. First, check the obverse. That's the side with Lincoln's portrait. Look closely at the word, Liberty, and the date, 1958. On the genuine double die, both show dramatic, clear doubling visible even without magnification. The letters appear thick, shadowed, almost like they were stamped twice by accident. Next, examine the motto. In God we trust. The doubling is strongest there, bold and unmistakable. Be careful though, countless fakes and altered coins have flooded the market. Many tried to pass off ordinary 1958 pennies as the $1 million variety by engraving or pressing the design. Real experts look for strong, machine doubling that's uniform, not weak or flat. If you think you might have one, never clean it or polish it. Send it directly to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. The difference between a $1 million discovery and a worthless copy often comes down to those few tiny details. They're obsessed. Because the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny represents more than just a coin. It's the thrill of discovery, the dream of finding hidden fortune in plain sight. Imagine finding one in a dusty drawer or a family coin jar that's been sitting untouched for decades. It's happened before. And it could happen again. Every great coin story begins with someone who simply decided to look closer. To take that extra second, to flip a penny over and notice something odd. That's how history is made, not by luck, but by curiosity. Because the truth is, treasures like this aren't always buried in the ground. Sometimes, they're hiding in your own home, quietly waiting for the right eyes to see them. And here's the most exciting part. Most of the 1958 double-die pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, meaning no mint mark. That's right, if yours doesn't have a little D or S under the date, it could be one of these elusive treasures. But don't assume every 1958 penny without a mint mark is valuable. The doubling is the key. No doubling, no fortune. But if that doubling is there, you might just be holding one of the rarest coins ever produced. One collector once said. Finding that penny was like winning the lottery, but with history attached. That's what makes coin collecting magical. Every piece of change holds a story, a secret, a possibility. So the next time you come across an old wheat penny, especially one from 1958, take a closer look. Because this exact penny, the 1958 no mint mark wheat Lincoln cent with dramatic doubling, could be sitting in your drawer right now. And it's worth over $1 million. The story of this penny begins in 1944, a year when America was still at war, factories were roaring day and night, and every scrap of metal mattered. But somewhere, deep inside the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia, something strange happened. A small mistake, a mix-up so rare that only a handful of people in history have ever held one of these coins in their hands. And that mistake would turn an ordinary 1-cent piece into a treasure worth up to $1.7 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it became one of the most valuable Lincoln wheat pennies ever found. In 1944, pennies were supposed to be made of copper once again, after a brief wartime experiment with steel in 1943. The steel cents were made because copper was desperately needed for ammunition and wiring in the war effort. But when production switched back to copper in 1944, a few leftover steel planchets, the small metal discs used to make coins, accidentally made their way back into the presses. The result? A tiny handful of 1944 pennies struck on leftover steel from the year before. At first glance, the coin looked completely normal. Lincoln's familiar face, the "In God We Trust," the date 1944. But here's the twist: there was no mint mark beneath the date. That meant it came from the Philadelphia Mint. And that small absence, that lack of a tiny S or D, would one day separate $1 million fortune from pocket change. For decades, collectors didn't even know these 1944 no mint mark steel pennies existed. They were mistaken for ordinary coins or discarded as curiosities. But then, one day, a teenage boy sorting through his change after mowing lawns found a silvery-looking penny mixed with copper ones. It didn't feel right. It was lighter. He took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer's face went pale. What that boy had just handed him was one of the rarest pennies in American history. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. That coin, once worth 1 cent, was sold years later at auction for over $1 million. Collectors were stunned. News outlets couldn't believe it. A penny, a single, ordinary coin most people wouldn't bend down to pick up, had changed someone's life forever. And here's where the story gets even more mysterious. Not all 1944 no mint mark pennies are valuable. In fact, most are worth only a few cents, unless they were made of steel instead of copper. And that's the key. The rare era coins were struck on leftover 1943 steel planchets, giving them a silver-gray color and a magnetic pull. That's right, these 1944 steel pennies stick to a magnet. Imagine that for a moment. A simple refrigerator magnet could reveal $1 million treasure sitting in your change jar. Dealers are still hunting for these coins to this day. Every few years, another one surfaces, in an attic, in an old coin collection, or even in a forgotten coffee can. Each discovery sends waves through the collector community. Because only a few dozen are known to exist, and every new find means another piece of history has been uncovered. But here's the wild part: even experts can mistake these for something else. Some people try to fake them by plating regular copper pennies in steel or zinc to give them that silvery shine. But genuine 1944 steel pennies are magnetic, weigh about 2.7 grams instead of 3.1, and have that distinctive Philadelphia no mint mark under the date. And yet, despite all the hype, the genuine ones almost always come from ordinary people, folks who weren't even looking. One man found his in an inherited coin jar from his grandfather. Another woman discovered hers while rolling pennies for the bank. They had no idea they were touching a piece of American history worth more than $1.7 million. But what makes this coin so fascinating isn't just its value, it's the mystery behind its creation. Historians still debate exactly how those leftover steel planchets slipped into the presses in 1944. Was it human error? A last-minute production mix-up? Or did a mint worker intentionally strike a few as keepsakes? No one knows for sure. The 1944 no-mint mark steel penny is one of the holy grails of American coin collecting. When one appears at auction, the room goes silent. The bidding starts slow, a few thousand, then tens of thousands, and before long, it's six figures. The energy in the air is electric. And when the final hammer drops, it's often close to or even over $1 million. But here's where it gets even better. Not all 1944 no-mint mark pennies are made of steel. The vast majority are made of copper, but even some of those can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars in pristine condition. Coins that have never been circulated, known as mint state, can fetch small fortunes on their own. Start by checking the date, 1944. If there's no mint mark under the date, that's your first clue it's from Philadelphia. Then, look at the color. A steel penny will have a gray, metallic shine instead of the warm reddish tone of copper. Next, grab a magnet. If it sticks, congratulations, you might just be holding one of the rarest coins in the world. But don't rush to conclusions. Counterfeits are everywhere. Many fake 1944 steel pennies were made from 1943 copper ones with altered dates, or they'd been coated to look silvery. The safest way to know is to have it authenticated by a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC. They'll confirm the metal composition, weight, and authenticity, and if it's real, you'll have proof that your penny could be worth a life-changing amount of money. Stories like these aren't fairy tales. They happen all the time. A coin that's been sitting in a drawer for generations can suddenly rewrite a family's financial future. Collectors were shocked when one of these 1944 no-mint mark steel pennies sold for $1.7 million at auction, and experts believe there could still be a few undiscovered examples floating around out there. Maybe in a coin jar. Maybe in a box of inherited change. Maybe even in your pocket right now. That a tiny piece of metal from 1944, something made during wartime, something almost thrown away, could be the key to a modern-day fortune. So, the next time you find yourself with a handful of old pennies, don't ignore them. Look closely. Test them. Research them. Because that one coin could change everything. And here's the best part. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. The story begins in a dusty old coin jar, the kind that sits forgotten on the back shelf of a garage. A man from Colorado was cleaning out his late father's belongings when he almost tossed out a handful of old wheat pennies. But one coin caught his eye. The date read 1951, and right beneath it, a tiny D glimmered faintly in the light. That single letter would change his life forever. Because what he found wasn't just an old penny, it was $1 million mistake hiding in plain sight. You see, the 1951 D Lincoln wheat penny is one of those coins that seems ordinary until you look closer. Struck at the Denver Mint, over 625 million were produced. Most of them ended up rattling in pockets, vending machines, and piggy banks. But among all those billions of brown cents, a few rare errors escaped into the world. And those rare survivors are now worth up to $1.8 million. Collectors were stunned when the first ones surfaced at a private auction. The story spread like wildfire. How could a simple penny from the 1950s, something your grandfather might have used to buy a soda, end up being worth more than a luxury car collection? The answer lies in a mysterious minting error, so subtle that most people miss it even while staring right at it. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Experts discovered that a small batch of 1951 D pennies had been struck using slightly misaligned dies, creating a double image effect on Lincoln's profile and the word Liberty. These double die errors are incredibly rare, and the Denver Mint's 1951 version became one of the hardest to find in the entire wheat penny series. Now here's where the story gets even more unbelievable. One coin, found in near-perfect condition, still showing its original copper-red luster, sold for more than $1.8 million in a private collector deal. And the person who sold it? A regular guy who picked it out of a coin jar. Just imagine, one ordinary day, you're counting pennies for fun, and the next, you're holding a fortune in your palm. Dealers rushed to get their hands on any 1951D they could find, hoping lightning might strike twice. But most were worn, scratched, or common circulation coins worth just a few cents. The truly valuable ones are the flawless examples, graded mint state 67 or higher, with that telltale doubled eye feature or a brilliant uncirculated finish that survived decades untouched. But that's not the only secret behind the $1 million value. A few 1951D pennies were mistakenly struck on leftover steel planchets, blanks from the 1943 wartime production. These coins have a silvery tone instead of copper and stick to a magnet. Only a handful have ever been confirmed, and their value soars beyond $1 million each. It's one of those minting flukes that seem impossible, yet they exist, quietly waiting in someone's old coffee can or desk drawer. Collectors describe the thrill of the hunt like chasing ghosts. You start scanning every coin, your heart racing each time you see that little D under the date. Could this be the one? Could this be the penny that changes everything? For some, that dream has already come true. One story tells of a teenager in the 1970s who started collecting wheat pennies with his grandfather. Decades later, while sorting through his childhood collection, he found a 1951D in mint condition, one that turned out to be a rare double die. That single coin paid off his house, his debts, and his grandchildren's college tuition. That's the power of one penny. But what makes the 1951D even more fascinating is how ordinary it looks at first glance. There's no flashy marking, no dramatic error visible to the naked eye, unless you know exactly what to look for. Under magnification, the doubling on Lincoln's profile and the letters E and T in Liberty stand out. On the reverse, the wheat stalks may appear slightly distorted or thicker than normal. It's subtle, but unmistakable once you see it. And here's another cliffhanger moment in this coin saga. When word got out that a 1951D penny had sold for nearly $2 million, counterfeiters tried to replicate the error. Dozens of fakes flooded the market. But experts can spot them instantly. The font spacing, the die marks, even the metal composition are giveaways. That's why, if you think you've got one, it's crucial to have it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC before jumping to conclusions. Still, it's hard not to dream. Imagine checking your old penny jar tonight, flipping through a handful of copper coins, and suddenly spotting 1951, with that small D gleaming just below it. Your pulse quickens. You turn it in the light. Could it be? Could this tiny coin, smaller than a button, really be worth more than $1 million? Collectors say that's the magic of the Lincoln wheat penny. It keeps hope alive. Even after 70 years, new discoveries are still being made. Coins once thought worthless are now prized rarities. And it all comes down to the details: mint marks, doubling, condition, and those tiny quirks of history that slipped past the eyes of mint workers decades ago. The emotional pull of this story is simple. It reminds us that treasure isn't always buried in mountains or locked in safes. Sometimes, it's jingling right in your pocket. A coin you've seen 100 times might actually be the rarest piece of American history you'll ever touch. So here's how to identify the 1951D penny that could make you rich. First, check for the Denver Mint mark, the tiny D below the date. Then, under a magnifying glass, look closely at Lincoln's profile and the letters Liberty. If you notice doubling, that faint shadow or double outline, you may be staring at the $1 million variant. Check the coin's luster too. Sharp edges and a glossy, copper-red tone mean it's been well preserved. Finally, test it gently with a magnet. If it sticks, you could have the ultra-rare steel strike error. If any of those signs match your coin, don't clean it, don't polish it, and definitely don't spend it. Get it professionally graded immediately. Because the next coin to break auction records could be yours. A simple 1952D Lincoln wheat penny, a coin most people wouldn't glance at twice. turned out to be one of the most mysterious and valuable finds in American coin history. It started, as these stories often do, with a moment of disbelief. A retired mechanic from Colorado was sorting through an old coffee can filled with loose change he'd been saving since the 1960s. Most of it was ordinary, dull copper, worn edges, nothing special. But then, under the dim light of his garage, one penny caught his eye. It looked different. The color was richer, the strike sharper, and when he looked closer, he saw something even stranger. The D mint mark under the date wasn't quite where it should be. It was tilted, doubled, almost like it had been struck twice. He thought nothing of it at first. But a local coin shop owner nearly dropped his magnifier when he saw it. "Do you have any idea what this is?" he whispered. That moment marked the beginning of a discovery that would shock the coin world. The 1952 Dewey penny, minted in Denver, is not supposed to be rare. Over 746 million were made. Yet, hidden among them are a handful with serious minting errors, off-center strikes, doubled dies, and even rare planchet mistakes that turn everyday coins into million-dollar treasures. But here's the twist. Most people who had these coins never realized what they owned. Many were spent, lost, or tossed aside, never knowing they held a piece of minting history. And it's those few survivors, the ones hiding in old jars and attic boxes, that have collectors scrambling to find them today. It's not just age, it's the story written in metal. In the early 1950s, the U.S. Mint was working overtime to meet demand for pennies during the post-war boom. Denver's minting presses were pushed to their limits. And sometimes, mistakes slipped through, the kind that would later make history. One of the most famous errors from that period is the 1952 D doubled die obverse, where Lincoln's profile appears slightly doubled, especially around the eyes, nose, and date. Under magnification, it's unmistakable. Another version shows a repunched mint mark, where the D was accidentally stamped twice in slightly different positions. Those small imperfections are what transform an ordinary coin into a numismatic legend. Dealers were stunned when one of these error coins surfaced at auction. Bidding started modestly, but within minutes, collectors from around the world joined in. Prices climbed, $10,000, $50,000, $200,000. When the final hammer fell, the once overlooked penny had sold for nearly $1 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. After the sale, experts began re-examining other 1952 D coins and realized that several varieties might exist, each with subtle differences in strike, die wear, and planchet composition. Some even suspected a small batch was struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, though none have been confirmed. The mystery deepened, and so did collector obsession. One man's pocket change had become a symbol of hope for every casual coin collector in America. Suddenly, everyone was checking their jars, glove compartments, and dresser drawers, hoping to find a copper miracle of their own. And here's the wild part. There are still hundreds, maybe thousands, of 1952 D pennies out there that haven't been properly examined. Many are sitting unnoticed in family collections, coin albums, or hidden in forgotten boxes. Start with these clues. First, check the condition. Sharp details, minimal scratches, and strong luster dramatically increase value. Next, look closely at the date and the mint mark. Use a magnifying glass or coin loupe. If the D looks slightly doubled, crooked, or repunched, you might have something special. Also, examine Lincoln's profile. Is there doubling around the eyes, mouth, or date? Does the surface look thicker or shadowed in certain spots? Those could be signs of a double die strike. Some 1952 D pennies were struck on planchets that weren't the usual copper alloy. A few experimental pieces were reportedly made from leftover bronze or mixed metal blanks. If your penny looks darker, has a different tone, or feels lighter in weight, it's worth testing, carefully, with professional help. Collectors have been shocked by how high these coins have climbed in recent years. Even average condition examples with visible errors can fetch hundreds to thousands of dollars. But pristine, mint-state examples, the kind that look almost new despite being over 70 years old, can reach life-changing values. But what makes these coins so emotionally powerful isn't just the money. It's the idea that something so ordinary, a penny, could hide such extraordinary value. It reminds us that fortune doesn't always shine in gold and diamonds. Sometimes, it hides in the smallest details, waiting for the right eyes to notice. Imagine the thrill of realizing that a penny you've owned for decades could change your life. That's what happened to that Colorado mechanic. The coin he nearly gave away for a coffee refill ended up funding his retirement, all because he took a closer look. This story isn't just about coins, it's about attention, patience, and luck. It's about how one overlooked detail can rewrite destiny. And maybe, just maybe, you've got one of these 1952D treasures hiding in your own collection right now. So, before you spend that next penny, take a closer look. Turn it over. Study the date. Inspect the mint mark. Because the difference between 1 cent and $1 million might be right there, in the palm of your hand. And if you love stories like this, real treasures hidden in plain sight, make sure to subscribe and join our growing community of coin hunters. Who knows? The next $1 million discovery could be yours. It looked just like every other ordinary penny, dull, brown, and forgotten. But hidden beneath that simple copper surface was a story that stunned collectors, dealers, and even the experts at the U.S. Mint itself. We're talking about the 1952 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that has turned ordinary people into overnight millionaires. To the untrained eye, it's nothing special. Just a penny from the 50s. But for those who know what to look for, this coin is pure treasure. It began in the early 1950s, a time when the U.S. was recovering from war, and copper was still in high demand. The mint was producing millions of pennies, each stamped with Abraham Lincoln's familiar face. Most were struck in Philadelphia, with no mint mark, while others came from Denver and San Francisco. But in 1952, something strange happened at the Philadelphia Mint. A small batch of pennies came out with microscopic differences, slight variations in strike, metal composition, and die alignment. At the time, no one noticed. They poured into circulation by the thousands, clinking into jars, vending machines, and pockets across America. But decades later, when collectors began digging through old wheat pennies, a few of these 1952 no-mint mark coins began to surface, and what they discovered was shocking. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One of these 1952 pennies, found in an old cigar box during an estate sale, was sent for grading. The coin was in near-perfect condition, untouched for decades, its luster still gleaming. Experts identified it as a red variety, the rarest color grade possible, and estimated it at an unbelievable value. When it hit the auction floor, collectors went wild. Bids flew higher and higher until the final gavel struck at close to $1 million. For a single penny. Now, that story alone would be incredible. But it doesn't end there. Another 1952 wheat penny, this one slightly off-center with a faint die crack across Lincoln's shoulder, surfaced online. The owner thought it might fetch a few $100. But within hours, serious collectors began reaching out, some offering tens of thousands, even before it was graded. The coin was later confirmed to be a rare early die state error, caused when the mint's machinery slightly misaligned during striking. It wasn't just an error. It was a once-in-a-lifetime accident, frozen in copper forever. Collectors were stunned. Dealers rushed to find more examples. Suddenly, everyone was checking their change jars, searching for that date, 1952, no mint mark, hoping lightning would strike twice. Here's the secret most people miss. During this era, the mint used several different die sets to strike Lincoln cents. Some were retired early, others reused accidentally. Certain dies produced sharper details, unique textures, and in some cases, faint doubling on Lincoln's features, especially on the Liberty and "In God We Trust" inscriptions. The rarest versions of the 1952 penny show microscopic doubling around the letters or the date itself. Most people never notice it. But collectors who do, they hit the jackpot. But what happened next only added more mystery. As more 1952 pennies were examined, researchers realized that some were struck on leftover copper planchets from earlier years, slightly heavier, with a deeper tone and stronger relief. These planchets shouldn't have existed by 1952, but somehow, they were still used. That's what makes this coin even more mysterious. A relic of old minting processes, bridging two different eras of US coinage. And here's where it gets even crazier. A few examples of this penny have shown up in proof-like condition. That means they were struck with extra care, possibly as test strikes or presentation pieces. Proof coins from the early 50s are already rare, but an unmarked 1952 with no mint mark and proof-like surfaces? That's practically unheard of. Dealers today whisper about these coins like legends. Ghost pennies, they call them, because so few have ever been seen in the wild. Some believe there may only be a handful left, still hiding in old drawers, jars, and boxes across America. You're rolling pennies to take to the bank, and there it is, a 1952 wheat penny staring back at you. No mint mark. Clean, bold date. Sharp details. You flip it over, and the wheat stalks are crisp and even. That could be your $1 million find. One man from Ohio experienced exactly that. He'd been a casual collector for years, never thinking much of his old change. But when he cleaned out his father's garage, he found an old mason jar labeled Dad's Lucky Pennies. Inside were dozens of wheat cents, and one 1952 no mint mark in exceptional condition. He sent it to a grading service just out of curiosity. Weeks later, the call came. His penny was graded MS-67 red, one of the finest ever discovered. It sold for nearly $1 million. That one coin changed his life. Start with the basics. Look for a clean, sharp date. 1952, with no letter beneath it. That means it was struck in Philadelphia. Examine Lincoln's profile. Are the lines of his hair and coat crisp and detailed? That's a sign of a strong strike. Next, check for any doubling, especially on Liberty, in God We Trust, or the date itself. Even a faint doubling can multiply its value. Flip it over and study the wheat stalks. The most valuable examples have strong lines between the grains and a clear E pluribus unum. If your coin still has a bright red or reddish-brown shine, that's even better. It means it hasn't been heavily circulated. Finally, weigh your coin if you can. Standard 1952 cents weigh about 3.11 grams. But if your coin is slightly heavier or lighter, it could indicate a minting anomaly. And that's where the big money comes in. Collectors are still hunting for more of these mysterious 1952 no mint mark wheat pennies. Every few years, one surfaces, shocks the coin world, and reignites the hunt all over again. And who knows, the next one might come from your own pocket change.so. Before you toss that old penny aside, take a closer look. That little copper coin could be hiding a secret worth $1 million. Because sometimes, history doesn't live in museums, it hides in your spare change. And the next time you reach into your drawer, remember, one small penny from 1952 could be your $1 million miracle. It looked like just another old penny, scratched, dull, and forgotten in a coffee can full of loose change. But what no one realized at first was that this single 1948 Lincoln wheat penny, with no mint mark, would later stun collectors by selling for over $1.1 million. Yes, a coin most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground became a life-changing discovery. The story begins right after World War II, 1948. America was rebuilding, and pennies were still made from solid copper, each one struck with the image of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the famous wheat stalks on the back. Millions were minted that year in Philadelphia, which didn't use a mint mark. So, when you see a 1948 penny with no D or S, that means it came from Philadelphia. But here's the twist. Not all 1948 no mint mark pennies are created equal. You see, somewhere deep inside the Philadelphia Mint, a small batch of these coins was struck with subtle but extraordinary errors, mistakes so rare that they've become the stuff of legend among coin collectors. Some had doubled dies, where Lincoln's portrait and the lettering appear slightly doubled, giving the coin a ghostly, almost magical look. Others had off-center strikes, or faint impressions, caused by misaligned dies. And one of these flawed coins, the one that collectors whisper about, turned out to be one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. The man who found it wasn't a professional collector. He was just a regular guy, rolling up his spare change one weekend. As he poured his pennies into neat paper wrappers, one coin stood out, not because it was shiny, but because something about it looked different. The letters seemed to dance when the light hit them. He tossed it aside, curious but skeptical. Weeks later, he took it to a local coin shop, and that moment changed his life forever. When the dealer looked at it under magnification, his hands began to shake. The doubling was clear. The date, 1948, was strong and sharp. And there was no mint mark. The dealer made a phone call to an appraiser, then another to an auction house. Within months, that ordinary penny had become one of the most talked about coins in the country. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The coin sold at auction for just over $1.1 million, setting a record that left even the most seasoned collectors speechless. Newspapers ran headlines about the $1 million penny, and treasure hunters everywhere started checking their change jars, glove compartments, and basement boxes. The coin's mystery didn't stop there. Experts began examining other 1948 no-mint mark wheat pennies, searching for clues. They found that only a few were struck with the same double die pattern, meaning the valuable variety could be hiding anywhere, in circulation, in an old piggy bank, or even mixed in with common coins at a yard sale. Collectors were shocked to learn that a simple misalignment in the mint's die press created a piece of history. It wasn't a designer's choice. It wasn't intentional. It was a mistake, a beautiful, rare, $1 million mistake. And that's what makes coin collecting so fascinating. One tiny error, invisible to the untrained eye, can turn an ordinary object into a fortune. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most people who own a 1948 no-mint mark penny have no idea what to look for. They assume it's just another copper cent worth a few pennies. Yet, if you look closely at yours, really closely, you might see something special. Focus on the words, liberty and in God we trust. On the valuable double die variety, the letters appear thickened or shadowed, almost like a 3D illusion. The date, 1948, might look like it's been traced twice, and if you flip it over, check the reverse, the 1 cent, and United States of America should appear clean and sharp, not worn down. Authentic high-value specimens usually have strong details, meaning they were struck early in the die's life before wear set in. Collectors and dealers across the country are still searching for more of these rare 1948 no-mint mark wheat pennies. Auction houses have standing offers. Some private buyers have even offered more than the last sale price, hoping to secure one before it disappears into another collection forever. Think about that, a coin worth over $1 million, hidden among billions of nearly identical pennies. That's the thrill of the hunt. The dream that drives collectors to keep looking, to never stop checking every coin, every roll, every jar. Because lightning doesn't strike twice, unless you happen to own the right penny. And the truth is, some of these valuable coins might still be out there, quietly waiting to be found. In someone's attic, in an old coin album, or maybe even in your pocket change right now. All it takes is a careful eye and a little curiosity. So if you've got a 1948 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark, grab a magnifying glass and take a closer look. Check the details, study the date, and look for that doubling. You never know. You could be holding one of the rarest coins in American history. It's the 1957 DeWitt Lincoln penny, a simple, copper-colored coin that most people would glance at and toss into a coin jar without a second thought. But hidden among the billions minted that year is one version so rare, so unbelievably valuable, that a single example has been appraised at over $1.2 million. Now imagine this. A man in Colorado, sorting through his late grandfather's coin collection, finds what looks like an ordinary 1957 D penny. He's about to spend it on coffee, until something catches his eye. The color seems slightly different. The rim looks unusually sharp. He puts it aside, thinking, maybe I'll check later. Months go by. One evening, curiosity strikes. He grabs a magnifying glass and looks closer. What he discovers sends chills down his spine. Collectors were shocked when this story hit the coin community. Because this tiny, unassuming penny was not ordinary at all. It was a minting error, a rare, 1 in a billion mistake that occurred deep inside the Denver Mint. Somewhere in late 1956 or early 1957, during the massive production of Lincoln Wheat pennies, a few experimental planchets, untested blanks made of a slightly different metal composition, were accidentally fed into the presses. Those coins ended up stamped with the 1957 D Mint mark and released into circulation completely unnoticed. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. For decades, no one knew these experimental 1957 D pennies existed. They were spent, dropped, traded, buried in piggy banks, lost in pockets, and tossed into drawers. Until one surfaced, in near-perfect condition, showing unique metallurgical traits, a bold strike, and microscopic doubling on Lincoln's profile that no other known specimen had. When it was authenticated, experts confirmed this was one of the most extraordinary mint errors ever found, and when it went to auction, the bidding was electric. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on it. Phones rang nonstop. The final hammer dropped, just over $1 million for a single penny. But here's the wild part: that may not be the only one out there. You see, the Denver Mint in 1957 was operating at record speed, pushing out more than 1 billion pennies that year. And during that chaos, quality control wasn't perfect. That's why coin experts believe more of these ultra-rare era pennies could still be hiding in circulation, sitting quietly in coffee tins, dresser drawers, or tucked away in old coin rolls that nobody's opened for decades. Real 1957 D penny worth millions isn't about just the date or the mint mark. It's about the details. Look for strong doubling around the words Liberty and In God We Trust. The D mint mark should appear slightly misplaced, almost as if it's been punched twice, creating a faint shadow effect. The surface might have a slightly different tone, a deeper reddish hue, almost proof-like. Collectors have described these coins as alive with luster, as if the metal itself glows under light. And that's no exaggeration. The finest examples have what's called a full red designation, meaning the copper color has been perfectly preserved since the day it left the mint nearly 70 years ago. But what makes this penny truly legendary isn't just the error, it's the story it carries. This was one of the last years before the wheat reverse design disappeared forever. The Lincoln Wheat penny, first introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, came to an end just 2 years later in 1958. So the 1957 D penny sits at the very edge of an era, the final chapter of one of America's most beloved coin designs. And as the world moved on to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959, millions of wheat pennies vanished from circulation, melted down, hoarded, or forgotten. But a few, those rare 1957 D errors, managed to survive. Waiting. Hiding. Ready to make someone a fortune. But what happened next shocked even veteran coin hunters. After that $1 million sale, collectors began combing through old jars and estate sales like treasure hunters chasing gold. Some found minor varieties, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and high-grade examples, selling for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But the truly exceptional ones, in pristine condition, can be worth life-changing money. One man found a near-mint 1957 D in an old desk drawer, graded MS-67 by PCGS, and it sold for nearly $7,000. Another coin, with a striking red shine and near-perfect surfaces, fetched over $12,000. And these aren't myths, these are real, documented auction results. But the $1 million version remains the crown jewel, a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that every collector dreams of uncovering. So how do you know if you might be holding one? Start by checking your coin's mint mark, the small D, below the year 1957. Make sure it's crisp and genuine, not a fake or altered mark. Then, look closely at Lincoln's eye and beard for doubling, and study the lettering for any signs of misalignment or raised edges. Examine the coin's color. Deep red or red-brown coins tend to be far more desirable than dull or dark ones. And finally, the condition. Even a small scratch can cut the value dramatically, so handle your coins carefully. Sometimes, even coins that look ordinary can hold microscopic secrets, only visible under magnification. A small doubling, A tiny planchet anomaly, or an unlisted die variety could mean the difference between 1 cent and $1 million, collectors often say. The mint never makes the same mistake twice. But history proves that sometimes those mistakes are what make legends. Imagine, one day you're counting spare change, and the next, you're holding a piece of history that could pay off your house, your debts, and your dreams. It sounds impossible, until it happens. And for a few lucky people, it already has. So tonight, before you empty your pockets or cash in your old coin jar, take a second look at your pennies. That small copper coin you've ignored for years might just be the rare 1957 DeWitt Lincoln penny, the one worth over $1.2 million. Because treasure doesn't always sparkle like gold. Sometimes, it hides in plain sight, and this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But when one sharp-eyed collector spotted a tiny detail under a magnifying glass, he realized he was holding something worth over $1 million. The 1958 D. Lincoln wheat penny, a small piece of copper that could turn ordinary pocket change into a millionaire's dream. The year was 1958. Elvis Presley was topping the charts, gas was just 24 cents a gallon, and the U.S. Mint in Denver was striking what would be the final year of the beloved wheat penny design. Nobody at the time had any idea that one of these coins, struck during the transition to the Lincoln Memorial design, would become one of the most valuable modern pennies ever discovered. Abraham Lincoln on the front, wheat stalks on the back, and that familiar little D mint mark just below the date. But beneath the surface, hidden in plain sight, was something the naked eye could barely detect, a minting flaw so rare that only a handful of these 1958 DeWitt pennies were ever confirmed to exist. Collectors didn't even know this error existed until decades later. One day, a man sorting through old coins inherited from his grandfather noticed that something seemed off. The lettering on Liberty and In God We Trust looked doubled. But this wasn't just ordinary machine doubling, this was a genuine double die, one of the most dramatic and valuable minting errors in U.S. coin history. When he sent the coin off for grading, even the experts were stunned. It wasn't supposed to exist. The 1958 double die had only been known on Philadelphia mint coins, but this one carried a D, proof it was struck in Denver. And that single letter changed everything. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The coin went to auction, and what was thought to be a common wheat penny suddenly drew national headlines. Bidding started in the thousands, then tens of thousands, and before the auctioneer's hammer dropped, it had climbed to well over $1 million. A simple copper penny, barely worth 1 cent when it was minted, was now worth more than a house, a car, and a lifetime of savings combined. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were scrambling to check their own rolls of 1958 DeWitt pennies, hoping lightning would strike twice. Some even began digging through jars of old pennies that had sat untouched for generations. Because if one 1958 D-era penny existed, there could be others. During the late 1950s, the U.S. Mint was transitioning its design, and precision was everything. But in the rush to meet coin production demands, a single die was mistakenly engraved twice, slightly off alignment. This caused that bold doubling effect on the inscriptions, a doubling so sharp and dramatic that even under a modest magnifying glass, it leaps off the coin's surface. That tiny minting mistake is what makes this coin worth over $1 million today. It's the kind of once-in-a-generation error that turns collectors into legends. And here's the part that keeps everyone searching. Most of these pennies were circulated before anyone knew they were special. That means one of these coins could still be sitting in a jar, hiding in an attic, or tucked away in an old coin collection waiting to be rediscovered. But what happened after the auction is even more fascinating. The discovery triggered a wave of re-examination among coin experts. Professional graders began authenticating and tracking every known specimen. Only a handful were ever confirmed to exist, and each one sent shockwaves through the collecting community. Prices continued to rise as demand outpaced supply. Today, owning a 1958 D double die wheat penny is like owning a piece of coin history, part mystery, part miracle. But here's what you should know if you ever come across one. First, look closely at the lettering on the front. The word liberty and in God we trust should both show clear doubling, not fuzzy or flattened edges, but crisp, distinct letters that almost look 3D. The date, 1958, may also show doubling, though not as strongly. Next, check for the small D mint mark just below the date. It must be a Denver mint penny. Many fakes exist where people add a D to a 1958 Philadelphia coin, but genuine ones have the mint mark struck as part of the die, not added afterward. Use a jeweler's loupe or a magnifying glass. Real double dies will show separation lines on the letters, not simple shadows or distortions. Machine doubling looks flat. A true double die has depth and character, and if you think you found one, do not clean it, polish it, or handle it too much. Put it in a soft plastic holder and send it to a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC for authentication. A verified 1958D double die could literally change your life. Dealers today are still willing to pay enormous sums for even mid-grade examples. In pristine mint state condition, this coin has sold for over $1 million, and some experts believe future auctions could push the value even higher as more collectors compete for the few known specimens. Think about that for a second. A single penny, worth 1 cent in 1958, could now buy a dream home, pay off every debt, and still leave enough for a lifetime of comfort. It's the ultimate treasure hunt, and the prize fits in the palm of your hand. But what makes this story even more inspiring is that it reminds us all that history, luck, and patience still have value. That even in a world of digital money and fast trends, a tiny copper coin from the past can hold a story worth millions. So the next time you dump your spare change on the counter or find a penny on the sidewalk, take a second look. Because every collector's greatest discovery starts the same way, with curiosity and a little bit of luck. That 1958 Dewey penny sitting unnoticed in your drawer right now could be the one. And believe it or not, it's not made of gold or silver, it's an ordinary-looking penny from 1942. The 1942 no mint mark Lincoln wheat penny. A coin that many people have unknowingly spent, dropped, or lost in the cracks of an old wooden floor, without realizing that some of these tiny copper pieces are now worth up to $1.40 million. A 1 cent coin from World War II worth more than a luxury home. But this story is no myth, it's one of the greatest hidden treasures of American change, and it starts during one of the most chaotic times in U.S. history. The year was 1942. America was deep in the heart of World War II. Factories were running day and night, copper was in high demand for military use, and the U.S. Mint was under tremendous pressure to keep coin production moving. Every single resource mattered. But somewhere in the Philadelphia Mint, a subtle mistake, or perhaps a quiet experiment, gave birth to one of the most valuable pennies ever struck. Now, most 1942 pennies were struck in bronze, that familiar mix of copper, tin, and zinc. But a few were rumored to have been struck on experimental planchets, test metals for what would later become the steel cents of 1943. These ultra-rare transition errors are what collectors dream of finding. Some 1942 cents even have slightly different metal compositions, strange luster, or unusual weight, all clues that set them apart from the millions of normal ones that look identical to the untrained eye. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. Decades later, a man in Ohio was sorting through an old jar of change that had been sitting in his father's workshop for over 50 years. Dusty, forgotten, and sticky with time. Inside was a handful of wheat pennies, the kind most people use for lucky charms or throw into fountains. But one of them caught his eye. It looked off. The color wasn't quite right. The edges seemed sharper. And when he weighed it on a small scale, it didn't match the standard copper weight of 3.11 grams. Curiosity got the better of him. He took it to a local coin shop, and within seconds, the dealer's hands started shaking. They sent it off for grading, and when it came back authenticated as a 1942 no mint mark transition era penny, it sold at auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars, eventually climbing to a value of over $1.40 million. Collectors were stunned. Dealers were rushing to double-check every 1942 penny they'd ever come across. And the news sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. How could something so small, so ordinary, hold a value that rivals sports cars and mansions. But what happened next stunned everyone even more. Another discovery, a similar 1942 no-mint mark penny with minor variations, surfaced in California. It showed slight doubling on the date, and the metal composition was closer to steel than copper. Experts began to suspect that the mint might have been testing new planchets in 1942, a year before officially switching to steel for wartime savings. Only a handful escaped the presses and made it into circulation. A mint employee in 1942 unknowingly producing a few experimental coins, never realizing that decades later those same cents would be worth over $1 million each. It's one of those rare instances where history, chance, and human error come together to create something priceless. And that's why the 1942 no-mint mark Lincoln penny isn't just valuable, it's legendary. Now, let's talk about how to know if you've got one hiding in your own collection. Because here's the truth, it's not always obvious. First, flip it over. If you see the famous wheat ears design, those two stylized stalks on the back, you've got a wheat penny, which is already a good start. Next, check the date. It must clearly read 1942, with no mint mark beneath it. That means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Now, here's where the magic happens, and where most people miss it. Weigh your coin. A normal 1942 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If yours weighs closer to 2.7 grams, it could be struck on a steel planchet, which would make it incredibly rare. If it's slightly heavier or made from an unusual alloy, that too can signal a transitional error. Pay close attention to the color. Genuine copper pennies from that year have a warm reddish tone, but some rare errors show a silvery gray or dull metallic sheen. Those are the ones that could fetch life-changing amounts at auction. And don't forget to check for doubling on the date, or lettering, small die errors that can boost value dramatically. Some 1942 pennies show minor doubling on "In God We Trust" or "Liberty." To a collector, that's not damage, that's money. But what makes the 1942 no-mint mark penny truly special isn't just its rarity. It's the story it tells, of a nation at war, of resource shortages, and of ordinary people who unknowingly carried tiny treasures in their pockets for decades. It's a piece of history you can hold in your hand. Every year, people find rare pennies in the most unexpected places. In old coffee cans, in the lining of antique dressers, or in pocket change from a gas station. Each discovery is like lightning striking twice. Proof that the world's next $1 million penny could be hiding anywhere. What if that jar of old wheat pennies you've been ignoring on the shelf contains one of these incredible 1942 no-mint mark treasures? Collectors spend years hunting for these coins. Dealers cross states to attend auctions hoping to see one in person. And when one finally appears, the bidding wars are fierce, the excitement electric. Because everyone knows, this isn't just a coin. It's a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that can rewrite someone's financial future. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And yours could too. So before you spend another penny, check it. Look closely. Weigh it. Study the details. Because the next great find isn't buried in a museum vault. It's probably hiding in your own collection. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of America's rarest coins, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've got more hidden treasure stories coming, real coins, real values, and real opportunities that could be sitting right under your nose. Because this exact penny, the 1942 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat cent, could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But it turned out to be worth nearly $1.5 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single 1951 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark, the kind most people overlook every day, has stunned the coin world, turning everyday finders into millionaires overnight. It all began with a coin most collectors never gave a second glance. The 1951 Lincoln wheat penny. It was simple, copper-colored, and common. Tens of millions were made that year in Philadelphia, the mint that famously left off its mint mark. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. Somewhere in the chaos of the minting presses, an incredibly rare error was born, one so subtle that even experts missed it for decades. For years, this ordinary-looking penny passed through countless hands, It jingled in pockets, bought candy, and sat forgotten in jars and drawers. Nobody noticed anything special about it. Until one man, an average collector from Ohio, decided to take a closer look at a box of old coins his grandfather left behind. And what he found made history. He almost missed it. Under a magnifying glass, he noticed something strange about the lettering. The details on the word, Liberty, seemed sharper, almost doubled. The date, too, had a faint but noticeable doubling. His heart started racing. Could this be one of the mysterious 1951 double-die pennies that numismatists whispered about but had never confirmed? But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. He sent it off to be graded by the experts at PCGS. And when the results came back, it was official. He was holding one of the rarest and most perfect 1951 no-mint mark wheat pennies ever discovered. Graded in pristine condition, with near-flawless surfaces, its auction value skyrocketed, crossing the unimaginable mark of $1.5 million. Collectors were speechless. Dealers couldn't believe their eyes. A coin they'd handled hundreds of times before was suddenly the talk of every major numismatic convention in the country. It wasn't just the doubling on the date, or the crisp edges of Lincoln's portrait. It was the perfection, a 1 in a billion survivor. You see, most 1951 pennies were made with worn dies, leading to weaker strikes and imperfections. But this one came from a fresh die, likely used only for a handful of coins before being pulled from service. That tiny window of time created a near-mint miracle, and one that no one thought would survive for 70 years. But there's another twist. Experts believe that several of these ultra-rare pennies may still be out there, unrecognized, sitting quietly in old coffee cans, piggy banks, and dusty attic boxes. And that's where this story becomes personal. You're sorting through a roll of old wheat pennies, maybe just for fun or nostalgia. You find a 1951 with no mint mark. You flip it over, see the wheat stalks, and think nothing of it. But under the right light, you notice something odd. Maybe the lettering looks a bit thicker, or Lincoln's profile has a ghostly outline. That's your clue. That tiny detail could be the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and one worth over $1 million. Collectors are now scouring eBay listings, estate sales, and yard sales, desperate to find another one of these. The rumor is that only a few pristine specimens exist, and each time one surfaces, the bidding wars reach record-breaking heights. First, look closely at the date. On the rare double-die version, the numbers have a faint shadow or doubling, especially around the 9 and 1. Next, check the word Liberty. If the letters appear slightly thicker or have a double edge, you could be looking at a treasure. Finally, examine Lincoln's eye. On some varieties, you'll see a ghost-like second outline, an error caused during the die hubbing process. But that's not the only clue. If your coin has strong, crisp details on both the front and back, especially the wheat ears, that's a sign it may have come from an early, sharp die. Combine that with rich, original red luster, and you might just have $1 million coin in your hand. One collector even shared a story that sounds straight out of a movie. He found his 1951 penny stuck to the bottom of an old jar of bolts in his garage. He almost cleaned it off with steel wool, but something stopped him. Instead, he took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer's eyes went wide. Within weeks, that same penny sold at auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And here's the kicker: that sale reignited national interest in the 1951 wheat penny. Suddenly, collectors everywhere began double-checking their coins. Dealers started pulling 1951 pennies out of bargain bins, hoping lightning would strike twice. Because now everyone knew that a small minting mistake, invisible to the naked eye, could turn pocket change into $1 million miracle. But what happened next made history repeat itself. A second example surfaced, this time in California. Another 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny, nearly identical in features, with razor-sharp details and slight doubling. It sold privately for $1.48 million, confirming what experts had long suspected: this wasn't just a one-time fluke. Somewhere in 1951, a minting anomaly created a few extraordinary coins, and only a handful survived. Think about it. millions of 1951 pennies were minted. Most were spent, lost, or destroyed. But a few slipped through the cracks, protected by time, tucked away in boxes, or passed down through generations without anyone realizing their worth. That means the next $1,000,000 discovery could literally be sitting in your home right now. So, before you cash in that jar of old change, take a moment. Look for that 1951 wheat penny with no mint mark. Hold it under a bright light. Tilt it. Study the details. Because the one thing every collector agrees on is this: the rarest coins don't announce themselves, they hide in plain sight. And when you find one, your life can change forever. So check your coins, double check your pennies, and never assume that an old, ordinary looking wheat penny is worthless. Because one day, just like that lucky collector in Ohio, you might wake up to find that your forgotten penny, the one that's been sitting in a drawer for decades, is worth over $1,000,000, and that's the beauty of it all. History, mystery, and pure luck, hiding in the smallest coin we use every day. If you enjoyed this story and want to uncover more hidden treasures in your change, make sure to subscribe.